Welcome to the Fantasy Fangirls Podcast, where two sisters dive deep into beloved fantasy lore, characters, themes, series, and more.
Thank you so much for joining us for episode 8, where we're covering chapters 44 through 50 of A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. But before we get started with this insanely packed episode, please listen closely to our content warning. While we're focusing our discussion on chapters 44 through 50 and book 2, we are going to bring in themes, foreshadowing, lore, and other insights across the ACOTAR series. So yes, that means these episodes are spoiler central for all of the ACOTAR books. These ACOMAF deep dives do not, however, include spoilers for the rest of Sarah J. Maas's series, except at the end of every episode where we include our Maasverse Madness segment. We'll give a big old spoiler warning beforehand, so if you haven't read the Maasverse, you can leave the episode right there, no worries at all, or you can keep listening for Throne of Glass and /or Crescent City crossover callouts.
So with all of that said, if you don't know why the Suriel gets to finally say, yes, that one, then please go listen to the full series. We will be here when you're done.
Also, we of Fantasy Fangirls are adults who say adult things about adult books. In other words, friends, this podcast is rated R.
We get a scene at an inn, and there's only one bed. Oh, no! While we are always rated R here at Fantasy Fangirls, this is extra rated R today, so please be mindful of little listening ears.
With summer in full swing, we're so excited to be podcast partners at several exciting events.
We will be at LeakyCon in Portland, Oregon this July 5th through 7th. We just announced our schedule. We're so excited. You can get your tickets at 10% off at the link in the show notes.
And we'll be at the Dragon Gauntlet event in Boyne City, Michigan this August 16th and 17th. We're hosting a live show at both of these events, and we're participating in tons of other activities and sessions and all the things.
Links to LeakyCon and Dragon Gauntlet are in the show notes. Plus, we have extra special discount codes for both events for our lovely Patreon members. So please head to your Patreon portal for more details.
Speaking of which, if you love Fantasy Fangirls and this ACOMAF journey we're on together, if you want more content, more community, more events, and more, please check out our Patreon.
We have 2 tiers that you can join. The Valkyries, which includes access to our Boppin' Discord, live Q&As from Lexi and I, community events, and a book club, which, surprise, we have Penn Cole, the author of Spark of the Everflame, actually joining us for our Spark of the Everflame discussion this June. We're so excited. That's coming up soon. We also have promo codes for live events, like we just mentioned, plus 20% off discounted and an exclusive merch store. That is all $5 a month. You can also join the High Fae, which includes everything from the Valkyrie level, plus early access to ad-free episodes, our full episode outlines, and special voting privileges. That is all for $10 a month. There's also annual memberships that are available for both tiers, where you get 2 months for free. Basically, our Patreon's amazing, especially with now like author interviews coming up. We're so freaking excited that even the authors are like, I want to join your book club. I'm freaking out. I'm so happy.
Join the party at patreon.com/fantasyfangirls. The link is also in our show notes or YouTube caption, depending how you're tuning in right now. And friends, really and truly, thank you so much for supporting us as we've turned this dream into our livelihood. It means the absolute world to us, and we just appreciate you so much. So thank you from the bottom of our hearts.
And now it is time to go to Starfall.
Nicole's going to open this discussion with a summary of what happens in chapters 44 through 50. So gather round, friends. We need an Inner Circle Debrief.
Chapter 44. Cassian flies Feyre up to the House of Wind, where there's a party a-happening. Feyre is quickly greeted by Mor, where they discuss the dynamic of Cassian and her incident 500 years ago. I feel like you're normally a few drinks more in before you start talking about previous one-night stands at parties, but whatever floats your boat. Rhys walks up, and in the aftermath of their fight, he admits that he needs some time away and he wasn't punishing Feyre. And then the stars begin to shoot across the sky. He takes her to a private balcony with a better view and tells her that the stars are really spirits on a yearly migration. Yes, we will be talking about it. He also opens up about his experience on Starfall evenings under the mountain. Touched by his vulnerability, Feyre moves to touch his hand, but what's that coming in like a wrecking ball? It's a spirit screaming, "Goodbye, cruel world!" and bitch slaps Feyre across the face. Rhys laughs, but what's that? It's wrecking ball number 2! Bitch slapping Rhys and coating him in spirit guts. Feyre paints splattered spirit on Rhys's hand and smiles at him. His response You're exquisite. Marry me, Rhysand. Feyre asks him to dance, but not up here in private. No, down there with their friends. And they do all night long. Ooh, chapter 45. The next day, the crew heads off to Windhaven, an Illyrian war camp, but not without Feyre remembering Rhysand kissing her brow at the end of the night, and she waited up for some dick. Alas, the dick did not come. She did make the decision, though, that but this thing between them, it doesn't have to have feelings. Fun and distraction. This is good. At the camp, Rhys talks to Devlin, an Illyrian lord, about not following orders to train the female Illyrians too. Feyre and Rhysand go off to train in the mountains, and she asks him about him and Tamlin's family feud. Turns out this one was not as fun as the TV show that is hosted by Steve Harvey. But no, Tamlin went on a family outing to kill Rhys's mother and sister. So Rhys and his father went on their family vacation to murder Tamlin's whole family. What a great story. Chapter 46. Back at the camp, Cassian makes them dinner and gives the lowdown on the Illyrian females getting trained, or lack thereof. Feyre and Rhysand walk up to sleep in their own respective rooms, but Rhys looks like he wants to tell Feyre something. Sure, it's not important. The next morning, Feyre and Rhys head deep into the mountains to practice her bending. Distracted by Rhys's looking down their mental bond, she approaches a river when someone says her name. It's Lucien, and he ain't playing games. Chapter 47. Lucien and crew have apparently been hunting Feyre for 2 months, and ignoring Feyre's wishes not to get taken away, Lucien tries to take her away. But Feyre winnows to Rhys's side, who uses a little bit of magic to have a quick costume change, hiding his wings. Oh, and wings are a good idea. Feyre shapeshifts and grows these large, dark, membranous wings. Quick, someone get the tape measure! She tells Lucien that he can tell Tamlin to go die in a ditch. Oh no, that's what I would say. She tells him to stop searching for her, and Lucien leaves. Rhys, fascinated, and let's be real, definitely turned on, tells Feyre she looks good with wings. Chapter 48. Rhys takes Feyre to a tavern, and oh darn, oh no, there's only one room available, and it only has one bed. Oh shoot. Rhys gets the two of them some dinner, and they change into warm clothes. Over wine, they share a thought for a thought, and friends, it's getting hot in here. Well, not really, because they're both freezing, and they need to cuddle for body heat. Oh darn, shoot! But Feyre begins toying with Rhys's wings with her cold fingers, and friends, Rhys takes his fingers and finger bang, fingerty bang. I said a fingerty bang.
Nicole, this one has its own song. I'm gonna finger bang you into my life. Girl, you like to finger banging. It's all right, cause I'm the king of finger bang. Let's not fight.
What did you just say?
I've been waiting.
Did you make that up, or is that from something?
That's a South Park song.
Well, second base, it's nice to see ya. But that's all for now. You're going to have to wait to do your licking, Feyre, darling, at a later date. Chapter 49. The next morning, Feyre and Rhys are out training, and Rhys is abnormally quiet. Finally, when flying back to the camp, Rhys begins to tell her something important. And an ash arrow shoots our bat boy out of the sky. Rhys, using darkness slingshot, flings Feyre out of the line of fire, and our girl lands in a tree. She immediately begins to go absolutely primal and winnows directly through the trees like an epic avatar spider monkey, finding a fork in the smell road. But one of the smell paths has Rhys and Feyre perfume, so she follows it to a cave where Rhys is chained up by Hybern soldiers. Feyre plays a game of kill all the people in the cave and gets 100%. Good job, Feyre! Getting him to a different cave, safe from the crazy slither monsters. Feyre gets each one of the arrows out of his wings by telling him a story about how one year Elaine bought her paints and she painted her dresser drawer. Flowers for Elaine, flames for Nesta, and the night sky for herself. Rhys says, come again? Still injured though, he falls asleep. Chapter 50. Oh boy! The next morning, Rhys ain't doing so great. The ash arrows were covered in some kind of poison, and Rhys looks like a small gust away from death. So Feyre, taking a cloak, goes off to ensnare the Suriel Google, and she catches it. What? Like it's hard? Google tells her that all she needs to do to heal Rhys is to give him a few mouthfuls of her blood. Gross. But if she wants to speed her mate's healing, all she needs to do is give him a pink weed. What did you just say, Google? Remember that whole High Lord I told you to stay with? Yes, that one! He's your mate. Was I not clear? Feyre, shocked and pissed, wakes Rhys up and gives him a blood snack and demands him to tell her how long he's known she's his mate. Well, fuck. Rhys tells her that he's known since Amarantha was killing her, but he didn't want to break the news to her because she was in love with someone else. But this does nothing to soothe Feyre's temper. Demanding he takes her back to the camp, Rhys winnows himself and his mate back to Windhaven. And that's it, friends. Nothing else interesting happens in this entire book. We're done.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Feyre cannot believe how quickly these past few months months in the Night Court have gone by, and Nicole, I cannot believe how quickly this year is going. We're almost done with ACOMAF, and it feels like just yesterday we were preparing for the release of Iron Flame. When life goes so fast, it's important to take a moment to celebrate your wins and, hey, make adjustments for the rest of the year too. Therapy can help you identify your progress and set achievable goals for the next 6 months.
I started therapy myself a bit over a year ago, actually. I can't believe I'm coming up on my anniversary. That's so exciting. And just like Fae-vorite and Rhys do bicker, me and my husband do have our spats as well. And when I tell you, therapy has been so helpful for me to learn specifically how to communicate my feelings with him, because that's something he is an expert at. Brett is so good at being very empathic, whereas I am not very good at expressing what's going on in here. And that has been so helpful with therapy. Now we resolve spats and arguments way faster. And just quick shouts to you, Taylor. Love you, girl.
If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge.
Visit betterhelp.com/FFG today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/FFG.
It's time to step into the cauldron and discuss key insights, character analysis, foreshadowing, theories, and so much more. Who's ready for Starfall, friends? I know I am. And so is Feyre darling. Because guess what? Our girl is in her iconic Starfall dress that gives us all goosebumps in the best way possible. And I just gotta say, my own Starfall inspired dress is literally in the mail as we speak from Sophisticate, and I'm just so freaking excited.
Meanwhile, I'm getting the Fae-vorite and Nightmares dress. I'm so excited. Sophisticate, thank you so much. We cannot wait to rep them.
Feyre is decked out in a gown that is crafted of tiny blue gems, so pale they're almost white. She has long sleeves that are tight, capped at the wrists with cuffs of pure diamond. As Mor will later comment, Amryn the Fire Drake would be obsessed with this dress. Her neckline grazes her collarbone, but don't worry, because that's the only thing that's modest about this dress. It hugs every curve before pooling to the floor like liquid starlight. Ah, how lovely. Feyre's hair is swept from her face with 2 combs of silver and diamond, and her hair cascades down her back. As she admires herself, Feyre thinks that she looks like a fallen star. Yeah, you do, girl. In Frost and Starlight, we will learn that Rhys's mother, who was an Illyrian seamstress, made all of these dresses for Rhys's future wife/mate. And this Starfall dress is certainly no exception. There is so much mystery around Starfall. No one will tell Feyre, and therefore us readers, what exactly it is, because no one wants to ruin the surprise. I bet they are all just so giddy to have someone who isn't familiar with it see it for the first time, because this probably doesn't happen too often, especially in Velaris. So her friends are just soaking up the surprise, just like all of us when someone agrees to read ACOTAR without knowing anything about it. We're getting little hints in the lead up to this surprise celebration, though. There's no lights in the city, no music, only silence, as if waiting for something. Indeed, there are crowds gathered on balconies and patios who are clearly having little parties with drinks in their hands and faint chatting. Earlier yesterday, Feyre noticed people in Velaris moving about with arms full of vibrant wildflower bouquets and streamers and food. The streets were being swept and washed, storefronts patched up. Basically, everybody has been getting ready for a holiday. Remember that Starfall only occurs in the Night Court. It is celebrated in lieu of Ninsar, which is the day of seeds and flowers. And even people in the Court of Nightmares do celebrate this day as well. It is not specific to Velaris. The people in the Hewn City even come up from under their mountain to celebrate and look at the beautiful stars.
Which, side note, I tried to do some sleuthing to see if Ninsar had any particular meaning or translation, and the only thing I could find was that it means hum in Swedish. So there's your fun fact for the day. That's actually not the last one I'll have for you. So there you go.
I do need to make a comment though here, because with this party at the House of Wind, there's a lot of people there, right? So my question is, how did all of these people get up to the House of Wind? Did they climb the 10,000 stairs? Fancy outfits? Have like the Bat Boys just been Ubering like overtime recently?
I had the exact same questions in my notes. And like that actually happened repeatedly when we were making this outline separately and then putting it all together. There's no way they climbed the 10,000 steps. That's like miles. There's no way they would have done that. So my only assumption is Ubering, but like there's 3 Bat Boys. That is a lot of Uber time, and that is And there's like a lot of people there. I have no idea.
This is not going to be the first time in this episode that we have to put it down for plot confusion.
I really hope they just had like a shuttle bus and it's like a party planner's dream where it's just everyone got shuttled up to the House of Wind and it was seamless and easy.
There we go. We have to remember Fae-vorite hasn't really had any friends. She had her sisters, who she had a strained relationship with, specifically Nesta. She had average sex lover extraordinaire Isaac, but no one to call a friend. While in the spring court, she did consider Lucian her friend, but as much as he helped her sometimes, like coming to her in the dungeon under the mountain or gifting her a dagger, he has also failed her, both as a human, like hesitating when she screamed for help, and especially after they all returned to the spring court after she became High Fae.
Even later when Lucian does arrive at the clearing and tries to take Fae-vorite away, because yes, that also happens in this chapter stretch. We're covering a lot today. Rhys is surprised to learn that Lucian didn't step in to her aid, especially after Under the Mountain. He was like, I thought at least Lucian would have done something. Me too, my guy. And Fae-vorite too.
Well, this feeling of assuredness that these people, the inner circle, are Fae-vorit's friends it's foreign to her, making her even question the true title of what a friend is. But really, for the first time at Starfall, she embraces that this is indeed what they are, friends. And she's finding her home, her people, shining brightly as a star who is living, laughing, loving.
Live, laugh, love. I bet that's everywhere in the House of Wind. Looking around, Fae-vorite notes that Amren is not at the celebration. And Moore says, quote, something about Starfall disturbs her.
Quick question. Why?
Same question. Same fucking question.
Does she know more about its origin? And it's rather disturbing. Amren does come from another world after all. And I feel like these worlds collide or there's like a portal that opens up in some way on Starfall. Could this one line about Amren be a connection to Starfall being otherworldly? Or should we just not overthink this?
We're the Fantasy Fangirls. We overthink everything. So I have a theory. I'm going to be able to say half of it right now. Like you said, we know that Amren traveled from another world, and Rhys later says that these are spirits on a migration. So what if Amren was one of those spirits that flew across the sky and she doesn't like looking up because maybe it was just not a very enjoyable trip? The rest of my theory will have to wait for Maasverse Madness. I'm sorry, friends. But that's as close as I can get.
We do know that Amren felt that curiosity when there was like that portal rip. And so that's why she came in. I don't have that in front of me, so I'm going off of memory here.
No, you're right. But then Fae-vorite and Moore's conversation shifts to how Moore and Cassian had sex once long ago, and it was deemed the incident. I love that it's called the incident. Like that is
with a
so
capital
funny.
I too.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Fae-vorite knew that Moore and Cassian slept together long ago from Rhys earlier in this book.
That was my understanding.
Yes.
But I will admit that the timeline of learning this info, it blurs when we just know so much about the incident after multiple rereads. And we've talked about it as a whole on the podcast. So I think Rhys has already told her what happened between Moore and Cassian.
I'm pretty sure he has, because I'm pretty sure it was in one of those training sequences or whatever. But then Fae-vorite asks, quote, so you two ... It's such a nosy leading question, which honestly is very Fae-vorite. Like I love our girl. She is also so sticking her nose in everyone's business. Even later, she will be aghast, if you will, that Azriel gives her a warning look as if to say, stay out of it, when him and Moore have I don't even want to call it a moment. It's when they're saying goodbye to each other. And I love you, Fae-vorite, but you deserved that look from Azriel where he was like, don't you dare.
You're like, I wouldn't dream of it. And it's like, oh my gosh, yes, Fae-vorite, you are so nosy. And she just doesn't think that she is. Again, relatable, but
again, she's 20. We have to remember it, but it is really funny. Like she's a very self-aware person in most regards, but she has some blind spots, and this is definitely one of them. But here's what we learn about the incident. More than 500 years ago, before the war, Moore visited Rhys for 2 weeks in the Illyrian war camp where they were stationed. And then Rhys, his mother, and Azriel all went to the night court for some courtly business. So it's Cassian and Moore who are left alone together. And one thing led to another, and bang, bang, bangity bang. Not the finger bang song like Lexi demonstrated for us earlier.
Oh, don't worry. I will definitely break out in that again.
Thank God. Moore explains that she wanted Cassian to be the one who took her virginity. She wanted to choose this very important moment in her life. And again, there is that theme of ours, choice. Moore had choice taken away from her because of the culture she was born into. So being this badass Gryffindor that she is, she grabbed choice by the horns and got down and dirty with one of the best Illyrian... Oh, that was a demonstration.
You're welcome, YouTube. I should not be on a camera. Like, who gave me a microphone and a camera? I'm sorry, keep going.
I love you. She wanted to get down and dirty with one of the best legendary Illyrian warriors. I hate you. That will always forever be burned in my brain now.
You can't say grabbed it by the horns.
I was almost going to say grabbed it by the balls, but I was like, I don't want to be vulgar. And then you humped the camera. So...
I do want to pause really quickly because, as I mentioned in our ACOMAF episode 3, if Moore is calling Cassian a legendary Illyrian warrior, that technically means he already succeeded in the blood rite. I admit that I originally felt like they were a few years older than 18 when they completed the blood rite, but I don't believe there's ever any confirmation of how old they were. So if we are going by this logic, this does mean that by the time this incident happened, they have already completed the blood rite. Although I think it's still a little iffy.
Maybe because they were legendary before they even went into the blood rite. It was one of the reasons that they were split apart because they knew that they'd be unstoppable if they found each other, which they did, and they were. So maybe it's after the blood rite. I'm leaning towards it was actually before because it seems like they're still in training, which I think
that's exactly how it's perceived. But it is stressed that they are not a real warrior until after the blood rite. So this could also just be more misspeaking because she is not an Illyrian and does not have that, like, obviously she does know the culture and all of that because of the Bat Boys, but she's using the term pretty loosely in that way that you were saying, where it's like, yeah, he's not technically a real warrior yet, but he is, come on, kind of thing. So just wanted to point that out there.
Yeah,
there's that discrepancy.
It's not the only discrepancy we'll be talking about today. However, in ACOWAR, we will also learn more about the incident and her reasoning for choosing Cassian specifically over Asriel. She saw the way that Asriel looked at her and knew it would have meant way more to Asriel than it would have to Cassian, who it didn't really mean much. And I love how she kind of calls him a fuckboy in that scene. Not outright, but it's implied. However, when Rhys came back the next morning, this is back 500 years ago, shit got ugly. Even though Asriel was angrier than Rhys and Cassian fought like they had never fought before. Not because Rhys was pissed about her losing her virginity. That's not his MO. It's instead because of the danger it now put her in. He was worried for someone that he loves, what her family would do now for debasing herself, quote, with a bastard-born lesser fairy. I do have a question, though, because as Moore is telling Feyre that she and Cassian have had other lovers in the centuries, so there is no unrequited love, she says, quote, "He just wants what he can't have, and it's irritated him for centuries that I walked away and never looked back." With only reading this book and, the rest of the series, specifically Silver Flames, I really did not think this was true in the slightest. And in fact, it was kind of like, ugh, like it gave me a little bit of an ick when I was reading it. He would never have felt this way. I know she says it's not unrequited love, but even unrequited lust for Moore, knowing what Asriel feels. That is not Cassian's style in the slightest. I do believe that Moore enjoys being wanted. I do believe she's really wanting to take the spotlight off of her love life right now and putting it on another. But here, Moore and Asriel relationship aside, this stuff around Cassian wanting her, it feels out of place because I don't get that feeling from Cassian at all. Or at least I'll say I didn't get that feeling from Cassian at all. Now, we would be remiss if we did not include a small bit of info that we get in regards to Cassian's feelings towards Moore that we discovered in the ACOMAF bonus chapter with him, Cassian, and Nesta. So in this bonus chapter, we learn in Cassian's third-person point of view that he knew Asriel was in love with Moore from the second she was introduced to him. And Cassian had been jealous, not because he wanted to be with Moore, he was in love with Moore by any means. It's because he didn't want his brother to be taken away from him or for their family, like him and the Bat Boys, their dynamic to change.
That is such a teenager mindset right there. I wouldn't even say just teenagers. others. Like, like if your friend is getting married and you're kind of feeling left behind, there's not that jealousy of the other person, but there's that jealousy of, I'm losing out on this life that we have and that we love together, and things are changing in a way that don't benefit me.
It's the abhorrent feeling of change rather than the jealousy of, maybe it is a little bit of, I want that, but it's more of, I don't want things to change. I think you're hitting the nail right on the head there. So when Mor asked Cassian to bed when everyone was gone, he did it out of that jealousy and instantly regretted it. I'm talking like first thrust, instantly regretted it, as he explains in his bonus chapter.
He actually says that in the bonus chapter.
Here I was saying I don't want to be vulgar.
It's not just Fantasy Fangirls being vulgar.
Then when Mor walked away after the incident and Azriel didn't make a move for 500 years, that's a long time. Quote, Mor was still there between them, somewhere between friend and lover, dear to him as family, but ... In this bonus chapter, as he's recalling this moment, this feeling, he's nuzzling Nesta's neck, and he notes how he doesn't want to tell Mor about Nesta and what's occurring and how he's feeling. So with all of that context, I'm not going to lie, I did not get that from Cassian's character at all. It did add a little bit more of like, oh, I guess that's like good to know. But this part of the story, as we discussed at length in episode 5, it really does feel out of place with the story's emphasis on family and their utmost respect over each other and always putting each other first. So even when Rhys comes in and confirms that it drives Cassian insane that Mor walked away so long ago and never looked back, it feels a little bit like throwing Cassian under the bus to stir up drama. And I don't like it. That's not our guy.
I agree with you. I don't think it's true in the slightest that Cassian cares that Mor walked away and never looked back, including with the context that we do get from the bonus chapter. I've gotten platonic vibes between him and Mor, and even Feyre has noticed that he seems to be the buffer, not competition with Azriel. Again, like there's different ways of feeling jealous and where it is allocated, and it's not necessarily specifically with Mor, but there's always like this, it's always just been so unresolved because it has, like, nobody's talked about it for so many years. I think Mor is deflecting big time here. And me giving her the benefit of the doubt is more speaking in a joking manner about Cassian wanting her, with Rhys playing along, so to speak. But Feyre doesn't have all the context or 500 years of understanding their true dynamic. She's asking for information to genuinely better understand as she becomes part of this family unit. And I'll be honest, Mor is muddling the waters with this last little dig at Cassian, joking or not. She has valid reasons for deflecting Feyre's prying questions. Feyre is definitely prying here. But like you said, this subplot just doesn't fit in the larger story about how they're a family. Is there drama and baggage within families? Absolutely. Are there other sides to the story? Yes. So we have to keep in mind we are only getting Mor's side. She is not the only one who has not been talking about this big elephant in the room for the last 500 years. In this moment, it feels like, yeah, she is sharing this information with Feyre, but then that last line about Cassian, it's stirring the drama cauldron when it is, in my opinion, unnecessary and untrue. I love Mor, but we did have to call that out because that's a little bit of like a skirt, what kind of moment.
Well, and we should note that Cassian, yes, he is very touchy-feely with Mor, and like, he has his arm around her and stuff like that, but I always pictured that Mor as like a touch love language sort of thing. Like that, he's just a touchy feely. I literally at the ball this last weekend, I held your hand because I was like, I love you. Like, I love you so much. Like, we do that with our family, like, and maybe that's just us, but I don't think it is. So I do want to call out that yes, he is showing that touchy feeliness, but I never got that in a sexual lust way. It was always in a friendship overflowing with love for the other person. I just want to touch you and squeeze you.
Yes. Yeah. And of course, also the buffer with Azriel. And there's just, again, the elephant in the room for the last 500 years between everybody.
Oh my God. That would get so old so fast.
Yes, it really would. And like you were just saying, the most handsome High Lord arrives. I gotta love how he circles Feyre, eyeing her up and down and saying, "You look like a woman again." Okay. The last time he saw her, wasn't she in her Court of Nightmares getup?
Yeah, she was.
Yeah. Rhys, I love you, buddy, but there are nicer ways to tell her that she looks drop dead gorgeous and like the woman of your dreams, as Mor points out. Luckily, though, everything with Rhys is about to improve.
massively.
But you know, when you and someone have recently had a big fight, ugly words were said, and you both just want to be able to move on, but that fight still hangs between the two of you. You want to move on, but you aren't quite able to yet. That's exactly where these two are at right now. Feyre opens her mouth, but feels all the wrong words about to come out, so she closes it again. Smart girl. She just wants it to be easy between them again, for all the terrible words to melt away. And I love how relatable and natural it is for how these two transition out of this awkward tension to bonding over the sky above them. She doesn't want to put herself in a similarly damaging position as they were in at the Court of Nightmares, up against him, but they're still wanting to be together. They're just so drawn to one another. Soon enough, she'll apologize for what she said, blurting that she didn't mean it. He'll admit that he stayed away because she was right, which is part of why she has felt so terrible, because she took his vulnerable truth, twisted it into what his worst fear is, and threw it back in his face. Even though Feyre meant it more as a reflection of herself, once again proving how similar these two are, that what she said to him during their fight is both of their truths. And also, ultimately, how their friendship and more, but we'll get to that soon, triumphs over their hard-headedness.
Rhys points up at the sky, and what a sight it is to behold. Staring at just one star vaulting across the sky, closer and brighter than Feyre has ever seen before. But then, more and more join the sky party, twirling and twisting over themselves until there are thousands cascading across the sky like living fireworks with white and blue light. However, later on the balcony, Feyre studies these lights and realizes these aren't stars, good sir, to which Rhys will explain that yes, they're not, but their ancestors, the Night Court ancestors, thought that they were stars, hence the name Starfall and why it stuck. They are actually those spirits on a yearly migration to somewhere, but why they show up on this particular day, no one knows. However, every year there are less and less. And when Feyre asks what's happening to them, Rhys says he wish he knew, but they do keep coming back despite it. Quote, "Why does anything cling on to something? Maybe they'll keep coming back until there's only one star left. Maybe that one star will make the trip forever out of hope that someday, if it keeps coming back often enough, another star will find it again." Oh, what a sad thought, as Feyre will note. But I love this because Rhys is kind of talking about himself here. He's hoping, internally clinging on to this hope that eventually Feyre will fall in love with him back, i.e. his I can't stay away. He says this pretty often in the next few stretches of chapters. He can't stay away because he's please, just it, not out of a begging way, but maybe a little internally, I want you to love me back. And he will keep trying and trying again, all without pushing her into a relationship. Definitely. I will say that very clear. And quote, "If it keeps coming back often enough, another star will find it again." That speaks for itself. While yes, this is, as Feyre notes, a very sad thought, it is also very in alignment with how he feels about his and Feyre's relationship. It's that so close, yet so far.
I want to take a moment and revel in the mystery of Starfall. I originally was wanting to come up with a bunch of theories for what these spirits are and what they symbolize, and while we certainly speculate that they are otherworldly, and therefore maybe there's a connection with Amren, and we'll have more to say in Maasverse Madness, I also fully appreciate that there's magic in this mystery. Part of the magic of Starfall is that no one knows what the migration is or anything about these spirits, but the people of the Night Court celebrate it anyway. Sometimes that's just to embrace the magic of the mystery, which I know we don't often do on this deep dive, but in Starfall's case, it feels most fitting to simply look up at the stars and marvel versus overanalyze.
I, on the other hand, did not have that kind of restraint, and I went down a theory rabbit hole. But shockingly, I didn't really find a whole lot. The little, however, that I did find, I'm so sorry, folks, we'll have to wait for Maasverse Madness. Sorry about it. In this moment of first looking up at the stars, Feyre begins to lean back into Rhys, but quickly steps away. I love that her first reaction in this moment of sheer beauty and awe is to step into his warmth and snuggle. And then people begin drinking and dancing and clinking their glasses. But this is not the same kind of drinking and dancing that we covered last episode, where they were grinding against each other, the throbbing music like Ice Cool Homecoming when Get Low comes on.
To the window, to the walls, till the sweat drops down my balls. By the way, I was singing and dancing to that song at our Starfall ball, and you were not there. You were talking to Henry, who is the Tamlin and graphic audio, and I can't believe you didn't catch that.
I'm sorry, I was talking to Henry. I felt like that was was very important. He was a cool dude. Anyway, this is not the wild, evil, sexy, forbidden dancing, at least what our high school chaperones believed it to be. No, this kind of dancing here at Starfall, it is, quote, for the love of sound and music and life. This is the type of dancing that is joyful. It's free. There's that word that's very particular in this book, free and happy. Everything that Valaris and the Court of Dreams stands for, which, speaking of our Court of Dreams, Mor, Cassian, and Azriel are all out on the dance floor, and they're weaving together as if they were one unit.
Emphasis on them being a family, like we were talking about earlier, just like one unit. I just love it so much.
Mor specifically, quote, dancing as if it would be her last time. Tomorrow, Mor sets off on her mission to the Court of Nightmares, and then who knows what war will bring. The last war 500 years ago lasted over 7 years, and in their minds, they might not be able to celebrate the special night of Starfall together for years to come with the ensuing war. And that's if all of them make it out of it alive, which they know there's a chance they might not. So tonight is...
Don't worry, SJM makes sure of that.
Oh boy, does she. So tonight, as they dance, it is their last time in their eyes celebrating together for a long time.
They, and specifically Feyre, because we're in her POV, have felt the weight of war coming for a while now. But now it's here. Plans are going into action that are more intense than, of course, that summer court mission. So it really is like the eve of war, so to speak.
However, Rhys's face is solemn looking at his friends for, yes, the reason above, like we mentioned, because he was separated from them for 50 years. Every year on Ninsar/Starfall, Amarantha, knowing what this night means to him and those in the Court of Nightmares, made him sleep with her, keeping him there longer than usual. He got through those years by reminding himself that his friends and his city, they're safe. Quote, nothing else mattered so long as I had that. She could use my body however she wanted. I didn't care. Oh, Rhys. Again, Rhys will batter, beat, and bruise himself over and over again, so long as it means the others, especially those he loves, are safe. Which, side note, this is absolutely the reason right here why he sacrifices himself at the end of ACOWAR. It is also a parallel between him and Feyre, who will later this book throw herself into the line of fire because she believes others are more important than she is. And both of these two do not allow others to shoulder their burden and their troubles and their horrors, specifically from under the mountain. I have to quickly plug actually Daniel Alexander, who has a wonderful video of all the High Lords going to therapy. And this is the reason Rhys is in therapy in that video. So shouts, if I can find it, I'll definitely put it in the show notes. But I love that video. It immediately made me think of it. And while Rhys is back with his friends, he's still healing from all those horrors that he can't talk about with them yet, which is precisely why he chooses to not be down with his friends, because he doesn't want to ruin their Starfall. That's so sad.
He's more comfortable watching from a distance, but guess what? He wants Feyre with him to escape to that quiet balcony where it can be just the two of them, because he can let her in, share his thoughts with her in a way he can't with the others.
So Rhys holds out his hand and they go off to a small private balcony with a better view of the stars.
You know that feeling after a long night of dancing and you finally snuggle up in bed? It's heavenly. Well, Miracle Made sheets make the end of every night feel heavenly because they are oh so luxuriously comfortable and temperature regulating, so you can sleep at the perfect temperature all night long, which is a biggie for me because before I got my Miracle Made bedding, I would wake up way too hot all the time and it really impacted my sleep. That's literally not a problem anymore and it's amazing.
Using silver-infused fabrics inspired by NASA, Miracle Made sheets are thermoregulating and designed to keep you at a comfortable temperature all night long, helping you get better sleep every single night. And have you ever laid down for a night feeling like you're about to have your Sleeping Beauty fantasies lived out, only to realize that your pillowcase kind of stinks? We've all been there, don't deny it. Well, Miracle Made bedding is infused with silver, like we said, that helps them stay cleaner and fresher 3 times longer than other bedding.
Go to trymiracle.com/FF to try Miracle Made sheets today. And whether you're buying them for yourself or as a gift for a loved one, if you order today, you can save over 40%. And if you use our promo FF at checkout, you'll get 3 free towels and save an additional 20%.
Miracle Made is so confident in their product that it's backed with a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you aren't 100% satisfied, you will get a full refund. Upgrade your sleep with Miracle Made. Go to trymiracle.com/FF and use code FF to claim your free 3-piece towel set and save over 40% off. Again, that's trymiracle.com/FF to treat yourself. Thank you so much, Miracle Made, for sponsoring this episode. As Fae-vorite and Rhys are on this balcony and connecting with each other again, and Rhys is opening up about why he doesn't want to be down with his friends, Fae-vorite turns to him and strokes a finger down his hand when a star collides with her face. We got to talk about this, because if these are spirits on a yearly migration, did that spirit just die? Like, she's got spirit splurge all over her, and I would imagine it's like if you're like like you're on a road trip, you're driving on a freeway, and a large bug slams into your windshield. Like, R.I.P. bug. Was that just R.I.P. spirit?
That would seem to be the case. Yes. Splooge aside, Rhys starts to laugh. Yes, I'm going to say that word as many times as I possibly can this episode.
Remember back when Amren and Feyre laughed on the foyer floor right after their heist in the summer court? That was Feyre's first real laugh since Summer Solstice last book in ACOTAR. While Rhys has chuckled with his family, she is taken aback by his real laughter in this moment. Quote, opened and delighted and lovely. Oh, and with that, you have to wonder, is this Rhys's first real laugh since, oh God, before Amarantha? 50 years?
Oh, I like to think that he's had some real laughs with his friends, but nothing quite like this.
Yeah. He's chuckled. He and his buddies have laughed, but I think that this is like this open belly laugh, I think that this is one of his first in 50 years. Oh, Rhys. When Feyre goes to wipe, what was it, Lexi?
The spirit splooge
off her face, slightly irritated at Rhys's laughter at her getting sideswiped by a flying glowing spirit, Rhys catches her arm. Quote, don't. It looks like your freckles are glowing. Be still, my beating heart. Oh my God. Feyre is still play angry and goes to shove him, and Rhys stealthily steps aside and collides with another spirit. R.I.P. spirit number 2.
More spirit splooge.
Maybe this is why Amren doesn't like Starfall. Maybe she was a spirit splooge and it hurt, and that's why she's trapped in Prithian. Maybe that's why. Or there's also a theory from Miss Willa's book club pod on TikTok that these two spirits are actually Rhys's mother and sister, and they crashed into them to get these two lovebirds to get together, really. Since prior to this, they were fighting, then they made up, then they were really just quiet looking at the stars. They needed a little nudge. And maybe it was his mom and sister. We're never going to get this confirmation. I think I can say that with pretty clear sincerity. Maybe we will. Who knows? I shouldn't say 100%. I'm 99% sure we'll never get this, but it's fun to think about.
I just love how these two are simply laughing together. That awkward tension we were talking about earlier is gone, replaced with more than just comfort and ease, but true happiness. And while Feyre doesn't recognize it in this moment, but will reflect later, love for one another. They're back to joking, where she's shoving him, not caring if he goes off the balcony because, hey, he's got wings. And at the same time, there's so much more than the ease and jokes that have been foundational in their growing friendship over the past several months. The deep appreciation for each other's laughs, the tightening of each other's hands, looking into each other's eyes and smiling with pure joy. It's so beautiful.
Feyre also starts to laugh, a cackling laugh at Rhys's spirit splooge, seeing exactly why Rhys didn't want her to wipe her own spirit guts off her face. So Feyre takes one of his hands and, using the spirit remnants, traces...
We really know how to set the mood here, huh?
It's still Fantasy Fangirls, even when it's a super sappy scene. So Feyre takes his hand and she traces a star on top of his palm, quote, until it looked like one of the stars that had hit us. Us. That word is so important here. Like Lexi said, this is a turning point for Rhys and Feyre's relationship. Not only does Feyre's attitude towards him definitely become more romantic, more sexually inclined after this, but this is also the night that she falls in love with him. This is the night where these two do become an us. But also, painting alert. Feyre, after months of feeling so disconnected from this side of her, this creative side of her, that is so full of life, she finally paints, quote, on him, for him. This is so fitting that in this romance book, in a scene that she does finally fall in love with him, with this person who brought her literally back to life, who actually quite literally and figuratively back to life now that I think about it, that this moment is when she finally paints again.
On him, for him. I'll even add for both of them because they're so interconnected. For her is for him is for her.
Later in the inn, Feyre will look at him putting on a hooded cloak, and another painting will appear before her eyes. Death on Swift Wings, she will call that painting. After this moment in Starfall, where she does paint for the first time, those little moments of paintings flashing before her eyes, they happen in more mundane moments. They're not in the fantastical extravagant anymore. They're in the everyday moments, which is really just showing that inspiration is coming back to her again. Rhys's hands then tighten on Feyre's and he smiles at her, end quote. He looked so un-High Lord-like with his glowing dust on the side of his face that I grinned back. Rhys's smile then fades and he looks at her with this awe and requests her to smile again.
Feyre realizes in this moment that despite their jokes, their playful ease, sexual tension, vulnerability, for everything he has done for her and their deepening friendship in the last months, she has yet to ever smile at him. And while she doesn't think it, it's like it dawns on her how much this male deserves to see her smile, deserves to see her be happy because he has made her happy. He's helped her so much on this journey for herself and for him.
So she beams at him, and Rhys's response is, quote, "You're exquisite." God, this right here. This is why Rhys is my number one book boyfriend. Exquisite is beyond just like kicking my legs up in the air and squealing. This is like the moment where the story is like low in your gut, tears falling down your cheeks kind of a love story. Which, side note, not long after Brett and I read this book together, we were like listening to it together, he started every single morning saying, "Have I told you how beautiful you are today?" And I'm like, "You took notes, sir. Nice job." Melts my heart every time. Love him. Rhys's first thought is that he stayed away from Feyre because he was convinced she'd throw him out on his ass in anger if he tried to talk to her. Quote, "I figured hiding was a better alternative. Who else have we seen use this technique? Yes, it is Feyre," again showing that parallel between the two. But also this again shows us just how much Rhys fears losing Feyre, going back to his number one fear of losing the things that he loves and how that tendency happens to him quite often. So he hid instead of letting that fear come true, which is a very relatable thing. His second thought is that, quote, "I'm wishing I could take back that kiss under the mountain." Way back when, back in episode 7 of ACOTAR, longest episode to date. In that chapter, Under the Mountain, right before Feyre's final trial, Tamlin took her into a tucked away hall and they went at each other like bunnies. He was smudging Feyre's painted body and tangling their scents together. I hate that I'm talking about this in Starfall. This makes me so mad. Rhys found them and jealous and pissed off that everything he'd done to ensure her sanity and that she would win, it was being thrown out the window by these two sex-addled bunnies. So he threw Tamlin out of this hallway. Thank you.
Huzzah!
And when footsteps sounded their way, Rhys went to kiss her, quote, "brutally and demanding, and yet, ... And what, Feyre?" Interruptions aside, though, Rhys was roaming his hands over the paint from reckless Tamlin, and his tongue was sweeping through her mouth, trying to get their scents entangled to cover up Tamlin's. When Feyre asks in this moment of Starfall why he regrets that moment, he says, quote, "Because I didn't make it pleasant for you." Which, correct, because Rhys was needing to cover up their recklessness, so he was 100% focused on ensuring everything he was doing was to cover up their foolishness. So yes, it was not pleasant for her because he had other priorities in the moment. Rhys opening up about wanting to take back that kiss, though, it does feel like him wanting to say, "I want this here to be our first kiss," which soon, my guy. And honestly, this moment doesn't need a first kiss. It feels more intimate actually without it, in my opinion.
I agree.
Yeah.
Feyre falls back on her dangerous territory narrative, which we're going to talk a lot about this episode.
Yeah.
But then she catches herself. These immediate thoughts are like a habit for her. But now she is starting to correct herself before the usual spiral downward. This is something new and different and open, and it's scary and outside of her comfort zone. But she wants to take that step and is willing to do so emotionally.
Quote, "No, Honesty. That's what it was. Honesty and trust. I never had that with anyone. This is intimacy like she has never known before. Definitely not with Isaac's sex lover extraordinaire, and definitely not with Tamlin, who didn't open up about anything real with her, especially under the mountain. This is the opposite of dangerous territory. This is a comfort and safety that, yes, I'll admit, is scary and intimidating to go into a relationship and be this vulnerable and raw with someone. I literally did not do this with Brett until 4 years into dating him. I'm not joking. But when you do have that person that you can share anything with, that you can be this raw and vulnerable with, I hate to be like, it's true love, but it's that unconditional true love that nothing could be less dangerous. And then, quote, Rhys looked up, meeting my gaze, and whatever was on my face, I think it might have been mirrored on his, the hunger and longing and surprise. Is this the moment she fell in love with him, do you think? Because especially how it's mirrored on his own, I'm going to go with yes, especially like that little hint of surprise. It's like, oh my God, I'm in love with you.
If we had to pinpoint a moment, I may have thought it was when he laughed and it was open and lovely. And like she like fell in love with him in that moment because of his, like it really dawned on her with his laugh. But I love this idea too, what you were just saying, where it's almost like he recognizes that she is also falling in love with him.
Oh. Feyre paints another line of star guts down his wrist and asks Rhys if he'd like to dance. His answer is such a long silence that she actually looks up to make sure, like, are you still there? And his eyes are teary and he finally rasps, you want to dance?
I bet this was the most beautiful question he has ever, in his 500 plus years of living, has ever been asked.
Well, this is so emotional for multiple reasons. Number one, this is the two of them making the choice to come back to life together as two people who are healing, yes, but who are coming out of the shadows hand in hand. And two, let us remember what Feyre said to Rhys at the beginning of this book. She said, quote, don't get me started about what you did to me under the mountain. One of those things he did to her under the mountain was making her dance to piss off Tamlin as much as possible and for many other reasons. That don't get me started about what you did to me under the mountain. It terrified Rhys. He thought he was like, oh, fuck, I fucked up so bad that I can never get her back. But here is Feyre saying, I want to dance with you. I want to share this moment with you. Whether she's thinking about it in the context of we're dancing together again, because we have done before, but I just think that's so beautiful where he's like, oh, you want to share this moment with me.
Also, neither of them are major get on the dance floor and shake your tail feather kind of people.
You mean they don't hit the floor with a ferocious energy when the wobble comes on? I don't understand.
No, they're definitely not those people.
I am those people.
So this is a very vulnerable question she's asking him, like Nicole said, to step out into life together, to embrace each other in a certain kind of intimacy where dancing isn't really a big deal for so many, but for these two to share that with each other, especially after the journey they've been on, it's huge. And Feyre thanks, quote, my friend through so many dangers who had fought for me when no one else would, even myself.
I mean, that's just a direct callback to Under the Mountain when he did whatever he could to ensure she got out, even when she had given up. Rhys, with a raw voice, tells her that of course he will dance with her and brushes a kiss to her cheek. Again, it's that not a kiss, almost a kiss that I feel like is so much more intimate and wonderful without a first kiss scene in Starfall. As he smiles, he pulls away and ends with a quote, I am very glad I met you, Feyre. So are we, Rhys. So are we. Our duo goes down and we learn the following day in a flashback that they danced until dawn. And then she let Rhys take her into his arms and slow dance with her. I love that Moore is just passed out on the couch in the background, which is just so, like, it's such a family friendship thing. I love that. That's so funny.
The way they stayed up all night dancing, I'm almost hesitant to say this, but I can't help but think of the spring court summer solstice. But there is one distinct difference here. Besides, Tamlin versus Rhys, like we all know that one. Starfall included family. It wasn't just the two of them, but also Cassian and Moore and Azriel, and they shared this happiness and wonderful night all together. Yes, this is absolutely a love story first and foremost, but it's also about found family, and I love that Starfall embraces that.
And after they'd flown down to the townhouse that morning, he'd kissed her brow. He's getting rather familiar with her face. He's like, kiss on the cheek, a kiss on the brow, not the lips though. And Feyre waits up for 30 minutes to see if Rhys opens the door to bang. What I would give for Rhys's 30-minute, like just pacing back and forth in this room. Should I? Shouldn't I? Should I? Shouldn't I? I don't know. Because he didn't just like go night. He did some serious contemplating.
Before we wrap up our coverage of Starfall, I want to emphasize one more time this theme of coming back to life and how Starfall is a full circle event for Feyre. She wants to spend the evening surrounded by her friends and with Rhys, even with strangers in attendance, because they all symbolize and exude living life to the fullest, celebrating the mysterious spirits migrating and marveling at the night's beauty, holding on to what is most important to them, and celebrating this life that they all have together. And yes, Feyre and Rhys had their time away from everyone, but they joined, quote, where life beckoned. We've gotten plenty of hints and moments where she feels awake again, feeling the pull to live life again. But here at Starfall is where she steps into the fullness that life can offer. Be excited to join in and be part of something bigger than herself, where she wants to be part of this family, wants to bask in this joy and simply live. The next day, as they get ready to go to Windhaven, the Illyrian war camp where the Bat Boys grew up, Feyre is right back to her shouldn'ts. I sound like such a broken record talking about this, but it has to be said. Feyre was making so much progress, but like we've said, these deep emotions after loving someone and going through a breakup don't just go away. And even if I do sound like a broken record, these lingering thoughts of Feyre's make it all realistic. Plus, what's to come all the more worth it because we've seen every heartbeat of this budding romance, of her falling in true, deep love. And we're experiencing her battles all the while that follow a breakup. That's one of my favorite things about this book. It's not just a break up and get with someone else story, and it's certainly not a love triangle, thank God. It's an inner journey, a struggle through complex emotions that take you on a roller coaster. And it feels so relatable and realistic as we go on this journey with Feyre battling with her true feelings versus what she should be experiencing. Okay, that's all I want to say about that for now. Let's head to Windhaven. And friends, it's no summer court vacation. Windhaven is one of the Illyrian war camps in the northern mountains of the Night Court. And even though the rest of the territory is warming up with spring, it sure doesn't seem like these mountains are. There is no warmth here, no joy. The camp is all bare rock and mud, with crude, easy-to-pack tents centered around large fire pits. There's about a dozen permanent buildings made of the gray mountain stone. We also have the sparring and training rings with racks of weapons, and of course, lots of winged males, Illyrians. Even the houses at the other end of the camp have no homey touches, like they're only used for shelter or storage. Compare this environment and these homes to Valaris, and more specifically, Rhys's townhome. How it's described as homey and lived in, nice but cozy. I believe he craved the opposite of what he grew up in for so long, and he loves to feel that sense of homey comfort after being starved of it for so many years here. We're introduced to Devlin, who is described as an older male, which pause, because anytime any one of these near mortal people are described as older makes me wonder just how old they are. Devlin was the war camp leader, aka the Lord, 500 years ago when the boys were growing up. He's been running this place for centuries and centuries, at least 500 years. It's so crazy to think about.
I imagine him to be like 900-ish, because Rhys's dad was 900 when he mated with his mom, and there wasn't really like, he's an old fart energy around Rhys's dad. He seemed maybe what we in, the mortal realm would call like between 40s and 50s. That's at least what I got. So I would imagine Devlin to be on the 40s and 50s, leaning more towards the 50s. I see him a little bit older. So I'm thinking like 900 to 1,000 plus. Wow. That's a long time to be alive.
I think of him kind of around Baron's age. I would probably put him, if I had to, like around 45.
Okay.
In human years.
Yeah.
And Devlin is just a peach, like real peach. He calls Cassian a dog, which Feyre will ask Rhys about later, to which Rhys has an amazing answer. That Cassian would be pissed because Rhys standing up for him in that way would be an insult to Cassian for not being able to stand up to Devlin himself. And this is the High Lord in Rhys. He knows when to pick his battles. As the mom of 2 toddlers, I completely understand how that goes. You really do need to pick your battles, both as a leader and as a mom. Devlin also has not been following the rules about the girls' training. Rhys and Cassian have instructed the girls to start training too, and while Devlin agreed, he insists the girls train after their chores. And what do you know? They have too many chores to have time to train most days, resulting in them not training for over 10 days now. So Rhys reiterates what Cassian told Devlin the other week: train first, chores afterward. Because you see, Rhys, but specifically Cassian, are trying to build an aerial fighting unit among the females to prove that they have a place on the battlefield. You can almost hear the word Valkyries off in the distance, although they were not specific to Illyrian females, I should make that clear. But unfortunately, the males make life so miserable for these females training that many of them leave. So the fact that Devlin is even open to letting them train, when in other camps there are decrees that if females are caught training, they're deemed unmarriageable, well, that goes to show the culture in Illyria.
Also, it's noted that under Amarantha's reign, it got worse. Yes, there was a worse. It went back to old ways of clipping and beyond. All of Rhys's and Cassian's hard work over the centuries undone by a red-haired bitch and her influence, which I'm assuming, I might be wrong here, but I'm assuming that's when Emery got her wings clipped, since she does live in Windhaven, which is one of the, this seems like a big stretch, one of the more progressive of the Illyrian camps. Because we do know that her father, who is just a freaking monster, can't wait to talk about him, did clip her wings despite there being a like, oh no, don't do that. But we don't know when it was. So I'm assuming it was under Amarantha's reign.
And the craziest thing, like Nicole was saying about Windhaven being one of the more progressive camps, is that Devlin is the mildest of the warlords. We'll find out soon that he allowed the 3 Bat Boys to participate in the blood rite and didn't deny them their victory, 2 bastards and a half-breed. So, yay for Devlin. What a low bar for Illyrians. Especially after we've met and fallen in love with Cassian and Azriel. Like, this is really a wake-up call for us. I also love how Devlin thinks of Feyre like Amren, quote, another like that creature you bring here. I thought she was the only one of her ilk. Now, we know both Feyre and Amren were made, but in very different ways. But dang, being compared to Amren, the power that Feyre has and how it emanates off of her.
I'm honestly surprised she didn't say thank you, because I would have. Rhys tells the camp lords that Feyre is his, quote, and if any of you lay a hand on her, you will lose that hand, and then you will lose your head. And once Feyre is done killing you, then I'll grind your bones into dust. I love this because this is such a twist on the touch her and die trope, because it's she will be the one to kill you, not me, as a protection motif or whatever. I love this so much more. We've talked endlessly on the podcast about partners standing to the side or behind, specifically the female partner, rather than stepping in front of them like they're this big, I need to protect you, meh. Rhys here is saying that she doesn't need the most powerful High Lord in existence to protect her. She can do it on her own. This is support right here. Again, this is why Rhys is my number 1 book boyfriend. I fucking love this shit.
Going off of how Devlin thinks of Feyre like Amren, Rhys is really playing up how Feyre is a power player here. She can hold her own. She is mine, not in the same way that he did so with Keir in the Court of Nightmares, where Feyre played the role as his plaything. No, here she is herself, powerful, his, and deadly in her own right. So don't fuck with her, okay? Or she'll break your bones herself. Rhys really took her words after the Court of Nightmares to heart about not needing protection.
It might seem like it will never be warm in Windhaven, but here in our mortal realm, summer is here, and there's no greater threat to your hot girl summer than summertime swamp ass. Such a buzzkill. Thankfully, MeUndies has so many different styles of breathe underwear, and they're all incredibly cool and comfortable. From high-waisted or hipster for during that time of the month, to cheeky brief or bikini for when I'm feeling myself, MeUndies has a cut for every butt this summer.
My MeUndies underwear are always the first pairs that I grab from my drawer because they truly are my favorites. I love wearing them at night. I love wearing them with leggings, in jeans, in shorts. Anytime, you name it, I'm probably wearing MeUndies because they're so versatile and comfortable for every possible occasion.
MeUndies has over 10 different styles ranging from cute boy shorts to thongs, even lace options that are actually comfortable. That's just beautiful. These cuts come in over 100 different colors and prints, ranging from black to your zodiac sign. And my favorite part of MeUndies is that they use sustainably sourced materials, and work with partners that truly care for their workers.
And hey, if you're for some reason not happy with your first pair of undies, it's on MeUndies. Summer is here, friends. Get every cut for your butt from MeUndies. Get 20% off your first order plus free shipping at MeUndies.com/FFG. That's MeUndies.com/FFG for 20% off plus free shipping. MeUndies, comfort from the outside in. Deep in the forest, Rhys and Fae-vorite start training her powers again. Well, Fae-vorite is using her powers. Rhys is carefully not using his because he knows he's being tracked. But before they begin, Fae-vorite asks him a question that has been weighing on her. After Starfall, after the Court of Nightmares, in other words, after she's now truly falling in love with Rhys and realizing that there's more than friendship between them, she needs to know the history behind Tamlin and Rhysand, which makes sense. Even though her heart has moved on, she just can't let go of this rule book that she shouldn't be wanting another male so soon after Tamlin. She should have been more grateful to Tamlin, even though she knows in her heart that he failed her and she doesn't love him anymore for valid reasons. Fae-vorite is so conflicted between wanting to move on, but this part of her is so judgmental of her heart and wants, and she's afraid to fling this rule book out the window. I think she's finally asking Rhys this question about the history with Tamlin because she's ready to hear it. She's ready to talk about Tamlin and listen, not in a way that is directly associated with her, but about Rhysand's past with him. She needs to know what went down between them, truly, the whole story, because maybe, just maybe, it can help her in her own feelings, especially now that she's getting involved with Tamlin's enemy. She needs to know why they hate each other so much, to understand the context behind their relationship, so maybe it can help her navigate her own internal struggles. She has no idea, though, what she's about to hear. All she knows up to this point is from what Rhys told her under the mountain, in answer to Fae-vorite asking why Amarantha targeted Rhys. Quote, "My father killed Tamlin's father and his brothers. It's a long story, and I don't feel like getting into it. But let's just say that when she stole our lands from under us, Amarantha decided that she especially wanted to punish the son of her friend's murderer." Well, now Fae-vorite is about to hear the whole story, but first she has to do some magic. Magic for answers. And because we Fantasy Fangirls already went over the story in detail about how Tamlin and Rhys became friends, then Tamlin's family killed Rhys's mother and sister, and then Rhys and his father went to go kill Tamlin's family back in our ACOTAR episode 5 Suriel, I'm going to skip the play-by-play here and focus on Rhys's POV through the history retelling with Tamlin. If you're like, wait, what? I need a recap of the story, we've linked the standalone Suriel YouTube video from this ACOTAR episode 5 in our show notes, so please go check it out. Rhys resonated with the struggles Tamlin was enduring, and that was why they initially became friends. He even admits that maybe it was pity. Rhys is someone who sees the innocent and wants to lift them up. He sees the good in people and wants to take care of them, take them under his wing, so to speak. That's exactly what happened here with Tamlin.
He even taught Tamlin some Illyrian techniques, and as we learned last book, that also included ways with females, which in doing this part of the episode, I was like, oh my God, did Fae-vorite fall for Tamlin? You know, after like the your hair is clean era and like more when he got like more comfortable flirting with her because he was trained by Rhys in the ways of women? That's my headcanon.
Tamlin was presumably the youngest son of a cruel High Lord with equally cruel brothers. But he was the most powerful one, the one who would inevitably become the High Lord of the Spring Court, which made his family hate him for it. Rhys could understand that because a similar prejudice and fear of his power had stalked him all of his own life and his Illyrian brothers' lives too. But we know that Tamlin's father was threatened by this friendship, threatened by these two allied sons of High Lords who were more powerful than him. So, to prove to the world that the High Lord of the Spring Court was strong and in charge, he, Tamlin's brothers, and Tamlin ventured to the Illyrian mountains where Rhys was supposed to meet his mother and sister. Rhys had told Tamlin about this, remember? We don't know exactly how or why Tamlin told his family where Rhys was going to meet with his mother and sister, but I do believe that it was not voluntary.
Interesting. I both agree and disagree. I don't think Tamlin was like, let's go kill some people. I don't think it was like that by any means. But I also think it would have taken something really big for Tamlin's father to convince Tamlin to outright betray his friend. Because remember, Rhys was supposed to be there and be murdered alongside his mother and sister. So my guess is that Tamlin's father hurt him I think it's never outwardly stated, but there's heavy implications that he beat him. I think there's something along those lines to make Tamlin agree to go off and betray his friend. But I also want to point out that Tamlin he's not one to stick to his own mind when there's someone more powerful around. He can be, I won't say easily, but he can be manipulated and swayed. So maybe his father presented So maybe his father presented some super twisted logic and Tamlin bought into it. Again, I don't think enthusiastically, but I think it was that I hate that I have to do this sort of situation. I don't think that would have been out of the question. But based on his reaction around the wings in ACOWAR and how he burned them, my guess is that if this did happen, if he did go, I'll call it voluntarily, but reluctantly voluntarily, he later saw the manipulation that it was and resented himself and his father and felt guilty, thus burning the wings.
That's definitely possible. I do think that ultimately he was manipulated to offer up this information. You know that I don't think Tamlin is a bad person. He tries to be good, but stumbles in his efforts. And we know that his family was absolutely terrible. So that's why I'm thinking it's not a stretch to wonder if his father and brothers, I'll even go out to say, tortured it out of him, or more likely blackmailed him or tricked him. Again, like you're saying, manipulated him, made him in some cruel, manipulative way disclose this information that Rhys had trusted him with.
Yeah.
As Rhys is sharing the story, you can feel the guilt wane every word as he shares the tragedy that befell upon his mother and sister. He told Tamlin about this meetup in confidence, who then told his family, making Rhys feel like he told the Spring Court exactly where to go. He was supposed to be there, but he wasn't. He was too busy training a new unit and decided to stay. Tamlin's family's mission was to kill Rhys, but even without him being there, quote, they slaughtered my mother and sister anyway. As a power move, as a way to prove that the Night Court is not as strong as they think they are.
There is a theory that Tamlin somehow got Rhys's mother and sister out, saving them. Personally, I am leaning towards no on this theory for two reasons. One, Tamlin's father and brothers were there. That would have been really hard to pull off as like a solo mission. And two, it's not out of the question, Tamlin is really powerful. But two,
shapeshifter, he could have turned them into like chipmunks or something.
True, very true. The second reason is because he had their wings in the study.
Yeah.
It is very implied that for Illyrians, you would rather die than have your wings cut off. Not implied. That's outrightly said on the page actually multiple times throughout this series. I don't think that would have happened if these two females had survived. So we never theory shame on this podcast. Personally, I just lean away from it.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think it would be very interesting. However, I think it's pretty cut and dry that unfortunately they are dead.
I agree.
Quote, it should have been me, Rhys says, and we have to call back to the training ring with Cassian when Feyre uttered the words, quote, it should have been me. In that chapter 30 scene, it was after Feyre said this out loud that Rhys swooped in because he knew deep in his heartbroken and guilt-ridden soul how much weight those words carried. And I'm going to quote here what he had said to Feyre in that chapter 30 scene. You will feel that way every day for the rest of your life, he told her then. I know this because I have felt that way every day since my mother and sister were slaughtered. He goes on to help her open her eyes to understanding how to live with it because otherwise it will wreck you and kill you. He knows this on such a deep personal level, and we learn about that right here. Then we learn about Rhys and his father's revenge, how Rhys held Tamlin's brothers' minds, rendered them helpless while he cut them to pieces, then melted their brains inside their skulls. That is certainly one way to kill someone.
Morally gray.
Yes,
that's what I say.
While Rhys's father promises they weren't the kind of males to kill Tamlin's mother, his father lied and did it anyway. I assume we have to take this at face value, and his father did indeed lie. Playing devil's advocate here, could he have intended not to kill Tamlin's mother, but in the moment he was so angry and set on his revenge that he did anyway, or shoot, I'll even say in self-defense he had to do it. I'm not trying to excuse the fact that Rhys's father killed Tamlin's mother, but I guess we'll just never know. And of course, Rhys tried to stop his father from going into Tamlin's room and killing him too. Rhys was tired of death, but his other motivating factor was that this person had once been his friend. And while he knew Tamlin was the reason that his mother and sister were dead, he also couldn't bring more death to Tamlin. Perhaps because he knew in his heart that Tamlin was good, because he was so shaken by the fact that his father killed Tamlin's mother and it took him out of his raging revenge. But what's notable here is that Rhys ran after everything went down here. Rhys is not someone who runs, but in this instance, he did, because maybe he couldn't believe what all just went down because of the shame and guilt that ended up with his father dying too.
I think yes to all of the above, and I'll build off of it. I think he also was just made High Lord, which is a huge thing to happen in just a span of a few heartbeats. So I do think part of it was overwhelm of like, oh my God, what just went down here? I also think part of it was knowing that he and Tamlin were the last of their bloodline. And part of it was securing the safety for the Night Court, or maybe securing the safety for the Spring Court, because he knew he was more powerful than Tamlin. And he was like, I don't want to wipe the Spring Court off the map right now. I do think it would be more protecting the Night Court. Like, he's all the Night Court has now. And so that would be a huge factor of it. Most of all, though, I do think it's when he says to Feyre, quote, I was done with death. I do think, however, part of it was, a large part of it was, I didn't want to see any more bloodshed. He's looking at Tamlin and he's like, I don't want to kill you, dude.
Good points. Good points. Feyre is listening to this answer to the question she asked, and she's just in complete disbelief. Quote, he'd murdered Rhysand's family, the High Lord I'd loved. He'd murdered his friend's family, and when I'd asked how his family died, he'd merely told me a rival court had done it. Rhysand had done it. This is a huge revelation for Feyre, understandably so. Rhys just explained to her how he murdered Tamlin's family too, but her focus here is on Tamlin's role in the murdering of his friend's family and how he hid all of this, never told her, sweeping it under the rug, which is very on brand for Tamlin, might I just say. This rival court that killed his family was Rhysand, one of the few other Fae that Feyre knew about, who she struck a bargain with. Tamlin didn't tell Feyre a lot, and she knows that. But this feels like a personal insult to her and what she shared with Tamlin, a betrayal of communication, and what's more, a betrayal of his character. Tamlin probably didn't tell her because he was so ashamed of his role in the whole series of events. But to her, in this moment, that's not an excuse. Tamlin played a pivotal role in Rhys's family being murdered, a pivotal role in causing Rhys pain and sadness forever. As Feyre is thinking about all of this, the clearing explodes in flame as she loses control of her emotions, and she internally explodes too, in rage and hurt. Or Rhys will later call this incident a glorious explosion of flame and temper. He loves her so much. Her thoughts even begin to spiral, wondering if maybe her presence here was just to taunt and get more revenge on Tamlin. But Feyre is once again halting her thought process and reminding herself that's not true. She's real-time rewiring her brain from being a victim, a pawn, to being worthy. And I love to see it after all that she's been through. She knows in her heart that her presence here with Rhys isn't associated with his history with Tamlin, which is indeed partly why he didn't want to tell her. He didn't want this knowledge to make her think he was trying to turn her against Tamlin. Rhys's history with Tamlin is so separate from Rhys's friendship with Feyre, and he's wanted to ensure she doesn't blur the lines the way she had initially started to do before cutting off her own thoughts. Backtracking a tiny bit, in the midst of this heavy info download, Feyre begins experimenting with her powers in new ways, and I just love so much how she is actively learning about her powers. Her powers, because these powers do not belong to the High Lords anymore. They are hers, to wield into something new that is both something of every court and something wholly new. Quote, it belonged to me, as I belonged only to me, as my future was mine to decide, to forge. Oh. For the first half of this book, Feyre was intimidated by her powers, and she wasn't ready to own them as hers. They were the other High Lords. She had stolen them from them. She wasn't worthy of these powers, and these powers were very foreign to her. But now, as she is on this healing journey of finding herself, of gaining confidence in her choices and her identity, the language has fully shifted from their powers to her powers. It'll be a big reason why she is able to shapeshift into an Illyrian shortly. And just think about how cool and unique Feyre is. She does not belong to one court. She is made by all of them. The sky is truly the limit when it comes to what she can do with her powers, how she can bend them and weave them together and have them work as one, from one source, from her.
I love that she's no longer looking at them as like as those different buckets to pull from. Like, oh, I'm switching from fire to darkness. It is all one, becoming easier for her to switch like back and forth because, like you're saying, they all originate from the same place, that eternal well of power, the Cauldron.
Yes. Last thing about the scene, we come full circle with Feyre and wanting to paint again. But not just paint, she wants to paint Rhys. And while this isn't the first time, or even the second time an image of him has flashed across her mind, it's the first time she voices out loud that she wants to paint him, which is a vulnerable thing for her to speak into existence. Although it doesn't read as vulnerable because there is such ease and comfort in their relationship. Remember back in ACOTAR when she told herself she would never ever paint Rhysand? Well, this is that full circle moment where she feels alive, feels comfortable with him, and can wholeheartedly trust him. And in classic Rhys fashion, he replies, nude would be best.
Paint me like one of your French girls. I love it. Back and getting warm back in Windhaven, Moore gives Rhys the lowdown, seeing 3 born fighters in the lot of female Illyrian warriors.
Safe to assume Emery is not in the picture here because as of right now, she is under her father's control and abuse and her wings have been clipped.
Correct. There are also 2 things that really stood out to me in this very short scene. Feyre mentions how no Illyrian would ever make a home with only one exit. Feyre, back when she was fighting the Midgard worm last book, mentions, quote, how every animal's den has 2 exits. I don't think this is in any way to make a parallel between the Illyrians and the Midgard worm and they're connected. No, I don't think it's like that at all. I do think it's to make the Illyrians, they're predators. Like it is really to highlight that side of their culture. My second thing here is it's mentioned how Moore leaves the next day to go to the Court of Nightmares, but she's there when Rhys and Feyre return from the inn, Rhys getting attacked, so on and so forth. So I'm guessing it was just a really, really short trip. But the way she was acting, it sounded like she was going to be gone for a long time.
I assume it is definitely a really short trip because she went to check to make sure her father was essentially still broken and not causing havoc. So it wasn't like a prolonged mission by any means. And I imagine she makes sure these trips to the Court of Nightmares is very short.
I know you're right. That timeline didn't feel like it made a lot of sense. Rhys and Feyre walk up to their respective rooms and Rhys is about to say something, but Feyre turns around and goes to her own room. I guarantee you he was about to be like, let me give you the full chapter 54 download because I'm sure it's eating him alive, especially since Starfall.
Exactly. She's opened up to him in a new and intimate way at Starfall, where he's realizing she will be receptive to hearing the full truth. He was scared to tell her before because he didn't want her to feel like she owes him her love. He dared to hope maybe she'll fall in love with him on her own without the fact that their mate's hanging over her. And he's realizing that yes, she has fallen in love with him, despite her soon telling him that she only wants a distraction. Now, he does say after she does find out that he was going to tell her yesterday, which is not this day here. So I think that was like the real moment he was about to say it. But in these moments kind of leading up to that, he's really starting to think about it and trying to figure out how he is going to tell her and when he is going to tell her. Once again, as far as Feyre has come in her journey, as much as she is truly starting to come to terms with the Tamlin breakup, she's not quite at acceptance yet. That'll come very soon after the Lucian run-in. So here we are again with traitor language. She shouldn't be falling for this High Lord of the Night Court. She shouldn't be feeling all these fuzzy feelings. Quote, what this was, whatever it was between us, because things between us had never been normal, not from the very first moment we'd met on Calamai. Mating bond, that's what this whatever it was is between us is. Oh my gosh. And recognizing that this is all coming to a head, Feyre is terrified, causing her to, once again, start spiraling and leave Rhys's presence. She can't trust herself around him as this is all building up, and she's not quite ready to fully let go and accept that this is okay. You gotta throw that rule book out the window, Feyre. There are no rules when it comes to following your heart. She'll soon play it safe for her own emotions as she keeps her walls up and only lets this be physical, fun, and distracting. Because to her, that's okay versus falling in love with another male. She's making excuses for herself to be okay with her feelings. Sure, Feyre. Let's see how that pans out.
The next day, our lovebirds are deep in the Illyrian mountains, so no one can see Feyre's, quote, glorious explosion of flame and temper. So this means that they will have to stay at an inn tonight because they won't be able to travel back this evening. Oh, darn.
Oh, dear.
But before we get to that scene, we've got some training to do in the freezing rain.
Don't forget all the wind, too.
Sounds horrible. That sounds horrible. But Feyre walks to the edge of a slope that ends in a roaring stream, and we hear Lucian's voice say, Feyre, the first time I was listening to this book, I was driving to go out to dinner during this part with my girlfriends. It was just me in the car. I was meeting up with them. And I remember I had to turn the car off right at this scene. And I was in, like, the entire time we were out for dinner, I was just like staring at my plate in utter shock. And neither of them really read Romantasy at the time. So they had no idea what to do with me. But now, actually, one of them has read the entire series. She's making her way through Crescent City. She's made her way through Fourth Wing so she could listen to the podcast. Shouts to you, Lauren. I love you, girl. But Lucian's metal eye starts roaming over her, and he says, quote, we've been hunting for you for 2 months. First off, hunting. Lucian, I love you. L. That's an L right there.
Yeah. L.
L. Secondly, I do wonder what he was looking for with his metal eye. We know that he can see things like, spells or certain glamours. So was he looking for any glamours or spells on Feyre, and he was surprised he wasn't seeing anything?
Possibly. I think he's also looking her over to see if she's been hurt or how she's faring, since they really have been thinking the worst for these past 2 months.
True. Third thing from this little section, we have to take a moment to look at this through Lucian's point of view, because we're so immersed in Feyre's head. It's easy to be like, fuck you, Lucian, you suck. But we do need to take a moment and really open the scope up.
But first, let's examine the full timeline. So, Feyre was locked up and then left the Spring Court in mid-February. She, Rhys, Cassian, and Azriel traveled to her sister's house for the first time at the end of winter. So we can guess that's around late February. It's only like a week or so after Feyre's arrival to Velaris, meeting the Inner Circle and agreeing to work with the Night Court. This was also when the Adder attacked Feyre, and then Rhys showed her the memory of him and Azriel getting information from the egg omelet buffet. Immediately afterward, she writes a letter to Tamlin. So the letter to Tamlin was sent in about late February. The day before they head to the Court of Nightmares, Feyre thinks to herself how she's been in Velaris for almost 2 months, putting this at mid to late April. Starfall/Ninsar immediately followed the Court of Nightmares visit, which actually surprised me because I would have thought it's in March with the start of spring, but whatever. So right now it is nearing the end of April, let's say, around April 25th or so, and Feyre has been gone for 2 months. Okay, now let's bring the Spring Court into the fold. Ianthe tried to push Tamlin toward Hybern after Feyre's departure because he was desperate to find a way to break the bargain, and the scholars at the Day Court were working too slowly. Remember, Ianthe had already been working with Hybern when she was in the Spring Court at the beginning of ACOMAF, and then after Feyre's departure, she tried to push Tamlin toward Hybern because he was desperate to find a way to break the bargain with Rhys, and the scholars at the Day Court were working too slowly. Tamlin wanted to act instead of wait, shock of shock, because of the letter she sent. Remember, the letter was sent approximately a week and a half after her departure.
Pause. I don't know why in my head I was like, it's months after she left, but I checked you. You're right. Damn, a lot of stuff happens in that week. That's like a half our book is that week and a half right there.
I know, because remember, it's like her first day on the job, and that's when she goes to the bone carver, and then it's like the next day she goes to the weaver.
Oh my God. And this is all before the summer court. So, wow. Yeah.
Yes, this is all before the summer court. Tamlin's been going crazy during this time. He's been trashing the house, killing the sentries who had been on guard, need I remind you, when Feyre was kidnapped. Major air quotes around that. Lucian begged Tamlin for more time, trying to prevent Tamlin from agreeing to ally with Hybern to get Feyre back and break the bargain. I'm assuming by Lucian begging for more time, it was him asking for more time to keep hunting Feyre, which he has now been doing for over 2 months. So right now in the Spring Court, Hybern is breathing down their necks thanks to unhinged Dianthe, who is already working with him. Tamlin is ready to ally with Hybern, but Lucian keeps hunting Feyre to try to bring her back without officially involving Hybern and leading Tamlin to make the bargain with him. Because from their perspective, number one, they either go to war with the Night Court to get Feyre back and Hybern, who wants access to the wall and again is breathing down their necks. Or they can ally with Hybern to make the Night Court think twice about going to war with the Spring Court over Feyre, have Hybern help get Feyre back and break the bargain with Rhys, and then use this alliance to Tamlin's advantage later on, aka inside spy for the oncoming war of Hybern versus Prythian. So, right here, Lucian is desperate to bring Feyre back to prevent this possible war with the Night Court, and therefore they don't need to ally with Hybern.
As we've discussed, Lucian and Tamlin, they do have every right to believe that Feyre is in major danger right now. She is in the clutches of Rhys, who they all know as the evil High Lord of Night, Amarantha's whore, the doer of her dirty work, who made them get on their knees last book and beg, who trapped Feyre in a fool's bargain, who made Feyre dance and black out every single night with barely any clothes on under the mountain. And that's
the laundry list.
They have every right to be like...
And hold on, that's not even talking about the fact that Rhys and his father killed Tamlin's family.
Now, Tamlin was utterly blind to Feyre's withering away in the Spring Court, but Lucian was not. We can't not include that here. While yes, meaning Lucian, does have his own narrative going through his head about Rhys and the Night Court, he also did see Feyre wither away and attempted to help, but as Feyre says, he picked Tamlin because he was afraid of disobeying him. And he believed in the unified front vision, if you can call it that Tamlin had. But in this scene, Lucian does not listen to Feyre and what is literally coming out of her mouth very clearly, mainly because he believes that she's under some kind of mind spell from Rhys. But despite her saying no, he still attempts to grab her against her will and winnow away. Lucian. That is... capital L times a million, bad.
Like, again, I'm not trying to defend him, but to our points here, we understand his perspective. He does not think that she is in her right mind. So if he can get her away from Rhys, then she can go back to who she is supposed to be.
Well, because imagine if he had gone back to Tamlin and she was actually under some kind of mind control. And he's like, she said no, my guy. I don't know what to tell you. And like, she actually was in major danger. Yes, this would be a very different narrative. So in his own narrative, in the own story that he is telling himself in his head, yes, it makes sense. Still an L. Still an L.
Yes, exactly. Like knowing what we know, it's an L.
I will say this reasoning does dig him a little deeper L grave here because Tamlin apparently...
Yeah,
this is where it really gets bad.
This is real bad. Yeah, as I was reading this, I was actually like, why do we all like Lucian as a phantom? He gets better. Like, trust me, like I do like Lucian now, but this is a real tough stretch for him.
I really started saying, I was like, I understand why Elreal fans really hate the idea of Lucian and Elaine together in this scene. I was like, I'm starting to get it. Not saying that I'm on that side, but here we are. So he digs his deeper L grave. Tamlin apparently hasn't been himself lately. He says this from the get-go. This is without asking Feyre, are you okay? Immediately, it's about Tamlin and his comforts. He does eventually apologize for what happened in the Spring Court, and he does say that Tamlin is sorry too, quote, more sorry than she could ever realize, and so is he. He's more sorry than she could realize. But again, he goes right back to Tamlin after that. Quote, you don't understand what... Oh, I can't even... I'm so pissed. This is terrible. Quote, you don't understand the mess we're in, Feyre. This is highlighting the Hybern plan right here. I need you home now. First off, the you don't understand language, it's very much like, I know better than you. Like, you don't understand. Like, you know, child, that kind of thing. But also the fact that I need you home. I is in italics. Is it because of I, meaning Lucian? Is it because of Tamlin's rage and temper? Is it because of Hybern and their impending doom with that terrible alliance? Is it a little bit of both? Because Tamlin's literally trashing the house. Great. It's great selling points here, my guy, is what I'm trying to say. I swear I do love Lucien, like Lexi and I said. But damn, I forgot how many L's he took in this book. It's a bad look.
Yeah, my blood was boiling reading this, and I have to keep reminding myself that he gets better. But I'm going to be honest, at least at this part right now, this deep dive is dropping him down the rankings of SJM men.
Damn.
There's too much competition.
It's so true.
I do think his main reason for needing Feyre back is the pickle they're in with Hybern. And by bringing Feyre back, Tamlin won't need to bargain or ally with Hybern, which Lucien really doesn't want. But yes, he's leading with how bad things have gotten with Tamlin. Have I mentioned he executed all the sentries who were on guard when she was locked up?
And just because everything he said wasn't bad enough, after Rhys shows up and does his little Lucien moment, which I'm not going to lie, love it and deserved, Lucien says, quote, "You made your point, Feyre. Now come home." He's talking to her, yes, like he's consoling a wild animal, but he's talking to her like he's belittling her like a child. Lucien, all around.
It's also interesting because he does think that her mind has been manipulated by Rhys. Again, understandably so from his POV. However, the way that he's talking to her right now is very much in a way that her mind hasn't been influenced. Yes. And he is, like you said, he's treating her like a child, and he had previously been treating her like a wild animal with the other sentries, like starting to like try to hurt her. And it goes right back to her primal instinct of not being locked up, and they just don't get it. He even really just doubles down on why what they did was the right thing that they did. Even if they are sorry, he's not able to comprehend her perspective. He's not willing to listen to her perspective. Also, just real quickly, I love how Feyre recognizes that Lucien isn't a real warrior like the Bat Boys. He has never actually fought in a war. He was not born when the war 500 years ago happened. And the Bat Boys, they have, and they are in a whole different category than Lucien. And she's very much like, no, I'm good. Yeah. I'm good. I'm going to stick with these people instead.
Well, because he's not listening her, to really drive her point home, to keep Valaris safe, to keep her family, Rhys, safe, she begins to grow talons at her fingertips and wings on her back. Wing and talon watch, Feyre's version. Rhys has already switched from his Illyrian leathers and wings to his, usual black jacket garb, using magic, unfortunately, that will come at a great cost, to change to his wingless outfit. But here it is notable that Feyre, she's not just growing wings, she's also growing talons too, becoming the beast of the High Lord that everyone believes Rhys to be. While this is meant to intimidate Lucien, this is also a huge "I am with you" moment to Rhys, and his, quote, "pulse of surprise and wicked delight at her wings," it taps down their mental bond. He is seeing just how much she is choosing him and his family over her previous people. As Feyre notes, Lucien's genuine pain on his face and how she doesn't give a shit about it. She thinks how the beast she's turning into might very well have been the creature she'd been if she'd remained in the Spring Court. Woof. Oh my God. Quote, "Until I'd learned to quietly direct those shreds of pain outward, learn to savor the pain of others." Fuck. Like why don't we talk about that more? Wow. But later, when Rhys says that it was a convincing performance, and Feyre responds with, quote, "I gave him what he wanted to see." I love that Feyre's wing watch is the opposite of Rhys's. He hides his wings so no one sees his true self, whereas she is showing the wings and talons to show them what they want to see, to show them that mask, quote unquote, of her becoming the demon with the wings.
This is why I love this book. I actually disagree with you and Feyre when she'll say she gave Lucien what he wanted to see, because I believe the wings and this coolness of her, it isn't a mask. It's the darkness that has been within her for so long.
Great point.
And this is her freeing it, being her true self, and therefore showing Lucien that she is not who he thinks that she is. By her embracing this darkness within her and gaining the confidence to see her powers as her own, she's able to winnow, which, by the way, huzzah for Feyre, and especially be able to summon the wings using Tamlin's shape-shifting magic. She's essentially using his magic against him, and I just love it so much. It's such a petty thing, but I love it. She says, quote, "I will demonstrate exactly what the darkness taught me." She stared this darkness in the face and wields it now. That's been part of this journey she's on, learning to live with and understand how to navigate this darkness. Now she is embracing it as a threat. Again, she's wielding the darkness, not letting it eat her up inside. I always find it interesting that she and Rhys call this a performance. I understand where they're coming from, of course. She dialed it up to a level 20 to make Lucien back off and not recognize her as the future lady of the Spring Court. But I think this was also her embracing her true identity, solidifying to herself as well as to Lucien that she belongs in the Night Court. So much so that even in this encounter with Lucien, she thinks how she would sacrifice herself to keep Valaris and her found family, including Rhys, safe.
You're a very persuasive person. Yes, I agree with you. That was good. That was very good. Lucien leaves with one last statement thrown at Fae-vorite and Rhys. Quote, "You're dead. You and your entire cursed court." He is not just making the threat of, "I'm going to kill you or Tamlin will kill you." No, he is saying, obviously coded, "We're going to go get Hybern and you have no idea what's coming for you and Prythian."
Because remember, Lucien will finally tell Tamlin to go ahead with the Hybern Alliance after this day in the forest. So yes, that's exactly what I'm thinking, is like he's realizing in this moment, like, fuck.
Yeah.
I gotta go back and ally with Hybern because my plan clearly is not working.
Well, side note, at the top of this conversation with Lucien, he notes how they were tipped off that she was in the Illyrian mountains. Were they tipped off by Hybern? Because there's no way it would have been the Illyrians. Like, there's no way it would be Illyrians being like, "Bring, bring, hello, Spring Court."
Okay, well, listen. I was wondering the same thing. Did Hybern tip Lucien off? My initial thought was yes. But Hybern doesn't technically know that Rhys is here yet because Rhys didn't use his powers until after their arrival. So I actually wonder if someone in Windhaven, again, the Illyrian war camp, somehow informed the Spring Court. Not Hybern, but the Spring Court. I hate even saying that out loud, but I don't know how that could have happened, and it raises a lot of questions that I'm not going to go into, but Hybern's tip-off would have been related to Rhys's magic tracker. Plus, Tamlin hasn't officially allied with Hybern yet, though he's damn close to pulling the trigger. So I might have to just chalk this up to plot convenience.
What if it was someone who told Ianthe? What if someone in the Illyrian mountains is like buddy with Ianthe because they wanted to, I don't know, get in her pants or whatever?
Very possibly. I don't think it was Devlin. Like, I don't think it was a leader,
no.
But it's very obvious that Rhys is there in Windhaven, and a lot of Illyrians don't like Rhys. So I could see the Spring Court or Ianthe having a spy in the Illyrian mountains.
Well, and we should note that, and Lucien has multiple, I won't call them spies, but he has multiple people who he's very close with in each of the courts. I don't know, he's necessarily said in the Night Court, but we should also note that they've been looking for her for 2 months. I don't think they've been looking specifically in the Illyrian mountains for 2 months.
Correct. I do think that they have been specifically looking in the Night Court, just because they know that's where she is. So probably they've been putting feelers out there where it's like, hey, we're looking for her. Can somebody help us, kind of thing. So yeah, I think it was actually somebody in Windhaven who spilled the beans.
And with that, Lucien, triple L taker of the shortest passage ever, winnows away. I want to do an L tracker because I'm pretty sure actually Lucien and Tamlin have taken similar, if not Lucien has taken more L's than Tamlin on this podcast, because he took 3 before Tamlin even took 1, which I hate that.
That tracks.
When Lucien winnows away, we know that he's going back to tell Tamlin what just occurred. But you do have to wonder simply how much he's telling Tamlin, because Tamlin's a little fragile right now. Did he give him a full beat by beat breakdown? Did he soften the blow? Did he leave the quote, "Tell Tamlin, if he sends anyone into these lands, I will hunt each and every one of you down and I will demonstrate exactly what the darkness taught me"? Did he leave that out of his debriefing message? Or did Tamlin go to Hybern to solidify their alliance because he heard this tell Tamlin monologue that she did from Lucian's debrief. And this was just the proof he needed to know that Feyre was being brainwashed, because Feyre would never, ever say such a thing about her precious Tam Tam.
I do think that Lucian made it very clear that the Night Court has done something to Feyre, which they were already assuming was the case after her letter, and they made her not herself. Therefore, Lucian agreed with Tamlin that, yeah, they do need to get her out of there ASAP, and the only option now is Hybern. Tamlin had already been thinking all of this since he, again, like I said, didn't think that the letter was truly from her in her sound mind. So Lucian is essentially just confirming their fears, and the fire's really under them now to be like, shit, we got to get her out of there right now. Hi, Hybern.
In Colorado, summer is the perfect time to just be absolutely 100% outdoors. Whether it's hiking, pool days, that's where you'll find me, or just walking around the neighborhood. Lexi and I, especially in the summer, are always on the go, go, go. But it's so important to fuel up for this time of year. And there's no better way than with Factor's no prep, no mess meals. Factor's menu is full of meals with options like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are dietitian approved and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. So no matter how busy you are, you'll always find time to enjoy nutritious, great tasting meals.
My family really and truly is a Factor family, including my brother-in-law, who used our discount code, by the way. And I swear, every single time we call him, he is heating up a Factor meal. And it's become like a running joke now. With 35 different meals and more than 60 add-ons to choose from every week, you'll always have new flavors to explore. And we're not talking about those bland microwave dinners you're used to. Like, I promise you, that's not this. Factor's meals are restaurant quality and feature premium ingredients like filet mignon, shrimp, and blackened salmon.
That sounds so good. I'm like getting hungry for lunch, and now my stomach's like, Factor. I'm probably going to bust a Factor meal open after this recording, not going to lie. Head over to factormeals.com/fantasyfangirl50 and use code fantasyfangirl50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. That's code fantasyfangirl50 at factormeals.com/fantasyfangirl50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active. Get out of here, Lucian, because it's time to talk about our time at the inn. We arrive in a small town with barely anything but an inn, 2 stores, and a brothel. The essentials, you might say. And we get to an inn, and they have no vacancies, save for a tiny room that had once been an attic. No one else on that floor, thank God. And even the bathroom is a floor below, which is not the most sanitary. This tiny room has such a slanted ceiling that in order to get to the bed, you have to crawl over the bed. It is nearly impossible to walk around the bed because everything is so cramped together. In fact, Feyre could sit on the bed and open up the armoire at the same time. Did I mention the bed? Because there's only one. Looks like Rhysand's request for 2 was not made. And welcome to the one bed at the inn, friends. Rhys, heading down to go get food, tugs on a hood. And while we discussed this earlier from Feyre's point of view, looking at the painting and what that meant to her, Rhys tells her that he loves when she looks at him like that. Quote, like my power isn't something to run from, like you see me. As a man who grew up knowing that his powers were unlike any others, who others have cowered from for most of his life, to have someone, let alone the woman you love, your mate, not see power, but instead see the man who lives beneath it, this is a huge moment for Rhys. It is so important for him that she sees the man beneath the mask. Very Phantom of the Opera of him. But because he so rarely has this experience, I mean, it is his biggest insecurity that he believes someone might see him like this and then walk away still. Might I remind you what Feyre threw in his face on the mountaintop? As Feyre is alone in this tiny room, she thinks about Lucian and wonders what he's reporting to Tamlin. And she reflects how, quite frankly, she's not surprised that Tamlin ignored her note. None of us are, friends. Let's be real. Quote, just as he ignored or rejected nearly all of my requests, acted out of his deluded sense of what he believed was right for my well-being and safety. Unfortunately, she is right. This is not out of character for Tamlin and his dominant territorial nature. She goes on to contemplate how the Inner Circle Bat Boys are in versus the Spring Court males. Cassian, while wanting to test her limits, he would always respect her if she said no, which we very much saw Lucian not do. If Rhys had started acting the way that Tamlin did, which is like hilarious, and she even notes how that would never happen, but if he did, Cassian and Azriel would have pulled her out of that situation and taken care of Rhys on a later date. It's a nice little foreshadowing for after she learns about the Suriel, literally what we're going to cover in just a few minutes, and she needs to leave to be taken somewhere away from Rhys, and Moore is the person who does it. But all the territorialism red flags really come to Feyre's line of sight here. She knows she loved Tamlin, but it was a different version of herself that loved him. And we've talked about this on the podcast, but she's finally realizing it. A version of herself that needed safety, comfort, survival essentials after being without those things for so long. But Amarantha had broken both of them so much, and specifically broken her, that they no longer fit together. Quote, "And I could let that go." It is very important that we have this inner dialogue of Feyre's, given what's about to go down in just a few pages. SJM took a huge risk in writing this series, where many readers do fall in love with Tamlin. There are people out there with Tamlin tattoos, we'll never forget. But people fell in love with Tamlin in ACOTAR. Not everyone, but a lot of people did. So much so that they believed it was the happily ever after Amarantha. And switching love interests in book 2, especially after everything Rhys did under the mountain, it needed to be handled with great care. And I believe I speak for many of us readers when I say SJM stuck the landing with ACOMAF. It is because of moments like this, though. We get flirting with Feyre and Rhys and the sexually charged moments looking at you throne scene, but it was just as important for her to have these moments of Feyre falling in love with Rhys as it was for her to have the moments of her falling out of love with Tamlin.
And she got that glimpse into how little they truly cared for her, all capitals, her well-being. She can finally accept that it's okay she's moved on from Tamlin and accepts the feeling that she wants Rhys. She needed to say those things to Lucian, to hear what he said to her for her own closure of this Tamlin chapter. It helped her stand up for herself and say no is no to Lucian, to Tamlin, to her own traitor thinking.
And this is really the last moment that we get like this in the book, because after this, it's mates time, baby. Oh my God, I'm excited.
I'm so sick of talking about this. And I say that with respect to the journey she's on. We've talked about that at length. But also, thank goodness, let's keep going here.
But we needed this I can move on moment before we move into the next section of our love story, so that there was no question that Feyre was bringing her whole heart, her whole self to Rhys. And there was not one single sliver that was Timmy Tam ridden. Good fucking riddance, in my opinion. Rhys returns with 2 stews, which is rabbit meat with a question mark, and then 2 meat pies, meat just unknown, and a bottle of wine. There's only one of those things that I want, if I'm being honest.
Nicole really loves rabbit stew, everybody.
Oh yeah, it's my favorite, especially if there's a question mark with it. That's just my favorite food on the planet. God, no. After Rhys changes, Feyre, I love the moment where he's changing and she's like, oh my God, like he's naked right in front of me, and she just like stares at her stew. We'll talk about that more later. Feyre asks him about all the magic that he constantly has at any given moment being used, from the shield over Valaris to closing the back flaps on his shirt, which I just think is so funny. Quote, "It helps me work off the strain of my power. The magic needs release, draining, or else it'll build up and drive me insane. And that's why we call the Illyrian stones siphons. They help them channel the power, empty it when necessary." He goes on.
So wait, what is the equivalent of magic blue balls then? Oh, like that's literally what he's describing here.
I'm about to go further. Hold on.
Oh, okay.
He goes on to say that if he goes too long without releasing it, he can, quote, feel the pull of it. He's obviously talking about magic, his penis, but he does go on to say that Amren taught him how to control the urge to tug, if you will. And I have another novella request. In addition to raging sports fan Amryn, I want her training Rhys, because all I picture is like the Yoda Luke scenario, but with much more sass and cussing and vulgar gestures.
The fact that they both survived this training is absolutely hysterical.
That is like everything I wanted the Star Wars training montage to be and didn't get. And honestly, I just want that novella so bad. Conversation moves to Feyre's performance today to Lucien and how Rhys admits that it was quite convincing. And when Feyre asks if he thought that she would go willingly with Lucien, willingly is a very important word there. He says he knew that she can take care of herself, but if she did go, he would find a way to live with it because it was her choice. Again, there's an ever-present theme of our book, choice. But you also can't read this and not think about what Rhys was willing to do if she decided to go through the wedding with Tamlin, which we will get the full download of that next episode. He was happy to step aside if it meant her being happy. What he was not willing to do was watch as she slowly died from the inside out, or have a life that she was living against her will, which was basically her time in the Spring Court, which she asks what Rhys would have done if Lucien had taken her against her will, which he almost did. We can't forget. Quote, "Then I would have torn apart the world to get you back."
For the second time in this episode, Feyre asks Rhys a thought for a thought. Again, I love that initiation. It speaks volumes that she is asking him these questions, inviting more from him emotionally to keep connecting on a deeper level. And what's Rhys's thought, you ask? Let me tell you. I'm thinking that I look at you and feel like I'm dying, like I can't breathe. I'm thinking that I want you so badly I can't concentrate half the time I'm around you. And this room is too small for me to properly bed you, especially with the wings. Woo! Let's crank this baby up to level 69. Hot damn, Rhys!
I literally wrote in all caps in my notes, that escalated quickly. Am I mad about it? No.
So naturally, in response, Feyre doesn't know what to do with her arms, her legs, her face, so she gulps down the rest of her wine.
I love how both of them gulp their wine before saying their thought. It really is them needing that liquid courage, because this is the point of no return. On the throne, they had the safety net of, oh, we're just putting on our masks. This is all for a role we're playing. This is full-blown putting yourself out there. It's like asking someone out and you're like, this is the most vulnerable I've ever felt in my entire life. And if they say no, it stings, it hurts. So I love that they're both like, and chug the wine. Relatable.
She gives her thought, quote, "I'm thinking that I can't stop thinking about you, and that it's been that way for a long while, even before I left the Spring Court. And maybe that makes me a traitorous, lying piece of trash, but," and he cuts her off, insisting it doesn't. And, I thought we were done with this, but here we are. She's voicing what she's wanted. She's admitting to herself for the first time that she wanted to see Rhys while she was in the Spring Court, and that she gave up on her and Tamlin before it ended. But I'll also say, very soon, she will be livid with Rhys for him not telling her about the mating bond. And this right here is a big reason why she is beating herself up over being drawn to her mate when she wasn't supposed to give up on this other relationship. If she had this information that she and Rhys were mates, it would ease this guilt eating at her and how she's stopping herself from acting on the feelings she has so desperately been trying to avoid and bury deep down.
And after these hot and heavy admissions that they give, Feyre says, we should get some sleep. And after a long moment, Rhys finally says, all right. Which you can read two ways. One is the like, I thought this was going somewhere else, but okay. The other is, and this is what I'm more leaning towards, I bet you anything he was debating giving her the full chapter 54 breakdown right now because of what you were just saying. Like, she's feeling so guilty, but I'm her mate. Like, she doesn't need to feel this guilt.
Very possibly. Again, he will not call back to this moment when he said that he almost told her yesterday. This would have been 2 days before in that timeline. But he is, I think, recognizing her internal battle and struggling with how to navigate this from his end. Like, he probably in so many ways never thought that they would get to this point. And he's kind of like, all right, we're here and I don't know what to do.
But alas, we get in the bed. And it's cold. It's very cold under the covers. And Rhys and Fae-vorite start off rather separated. Like, it's like you're sleeping in bed. Like, you and we just shared a bed when we were at
I know, I was like about to make a comment about how we had asked for 2 beds, but they only had one available. And it's like, that would be very inappropriate given the context here.
It was true. We stayed separate though the entire night.
We had something called heat.
And comforters. Oh my God. That's so
and
funny.
the whole fact we're 2 sisters. Anyway.
Rhys and Fae-vorite start off separated, but they're shivering so much that Rhys comes over to spoon her. Quote, "No expectations, just body heat." And body heat he gives her, he does. Arms going around her, one over, one under. Which, side note, I've never spooned where someone's basically hugging me because I fear I'd like crush their arm. They always have like their arm tucked up and one arm over. Am I crazy?
Yeah, it is a little crazy. Yeah, I'm like trying to think right now. And yeah, no, it's always like both arms in some capacity.
Oh. I've always done like one arm. Sometimes it's like,
what do you do with your arm then?
Not put it under me so it falls asleep.
So yeah, you put it under them, and that's how you wrap them up and hold them.
I've just been getting half-ass spoons my entire life, apparently, I guess. Wow. Can someone in the comments please tell me that I'm not crazy? And please tell me that they spoon that way too? Wow, that's really funny. Anyway, one arm over, one arm under, because apparently that's normal and I'm just weird. One arm flattens on her stomach and the other around her chest. Their legs are entangling with each other. I love that little detail, how their legs just like automatically entangle with each other. And his large wing drapes over them as an extra blanket. But Fae-vorite, ever the curious student, takes one very cold hand and traces her finger along the inside of his wing, and something hard pushes against her ass.
Penis!
This did make me wonder, because Rhys has mentioned that he's never had a sexual experience with his wings out. Does that include any sexual experience ever? I'm not talking about just sex, but like snuggles, like a snuggle session with wings out, even back at Windhaven when he was like a teenager?
Yes, I have a feeling that he has not had very many snuggle sessions in his past.
That does definitely check. Yeah. So this is his first time. So basically Fae-vorite is taking his dick up, wings out in virginity here.
Yes, that is my assumption here. Yes.
These are the very important questions that are now our jobs. I just want to point that out. Anyway, Rhys's fingers start to make idle strokes over her, and she presses herself against him, wanting more, more, more. Rhys asks her, quote, "What is it you want, Fae-vorite?" And note, he asks her this twice, just like he did on the mountaintop right after the Court of Nightmares. However, with very different circumstances around it. Fae-vorite thinks more, 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 but she doesn't want to give him the satisfaction of knowing that yet. So Fae-vorite says, quote, "I want a distraction. I want fun." Earlier this chapter stretch, Fae-vorite decides that their relationship can be purely physical, uncomplicated, because that way it doesn't feel so much of a betrayal to Tamlin. She just made the decision that she can move on and that she's releasing the guilt around it, I'll say. So my guess is that because she did just come to this decision, she knows she does want Rhys. She wants a real connection, but she's not ready to say that to him yet. Since this is like so previously on her mind, it's just the first thing she blurts out, but she still lies.
Yes, and it's interesting because when she just a few pages ago gave her thought, she admitted that she hasn't been able to stop thinking of him. Now, it could be interpreted that she hasn't been able to stop thinking about him sexually, but that's certainly not the implication here, especially as she's saying about since the spring court and whatnot. But then, of course, that saying, like that makes me a lying, traitorous, piece of trash. And this is her safety net there. She's still not ready to even fully admit her deep love for him to herself, because when she does, it's like there's no going back. She can say that line about what she's thinking. She has to then not be able to immediately follow it up with how bad of a person she is. When she does really own that, there is no going back. When she owns that both to herself and to him. It's a good thing Rhys has the most epic monologue of all romantasy to finally help her acknowledge they are soulmates, and like really she's able to work through her feelings and finally admit to him and to herself that she loves him.
And this moment breaks my heart for Rhys because he believes her, or at least acts as if he believes her. His body goes tense at her words. Here is his mate that he has been in love with for a long while, for over half a year, who just admitted that she's not able to stop thinking about him, who he is finally getting to touch without the Court of Nightmares mask. And she's ready for him, like wildly ready.
She is.
And she says she just wants a distraction. Now, what would that distraction be from? My mind is that it would be from Tamlin and their doom of a relationship and that pain associated with it, which fucking ouch. She's telling him that in subtext, again, this is not what she's actually wanting, but in this subtext of what she's voicing to him, she's telling him, I don't directly want you. I want you because I want to forget someone else. There's a great quote in the Shadow and Bone series, actually, that says, quote, I want to kiss you, but I won't. Not unless you're thinking about me instead of trying to forget him. And I just which is a beautifully written line, by the way. I love that. Lee Bardugo, well done. But that immediately was just what I thought of.
That's interesting because I was thinking the distraction was more from her own messy life and this war that they are entering and the complexities of this healing journey she's on, not specifically about Tamlin, but her finding her own identity.
Okay, I can vibe with that. I think it's kind of a the all of the above situation.
I think so too, yeah.
He also might have just told her, like seconds ago when he did his long pause, the full chapter 54 download. And here she is saying, I just want a distraction. I want fun. And I bet he's like, whoo, thank God I didn't say anything. But it's also, she's saying this, she's not meaning it, but he's taking this as kosher. She's saying she doesn't want something real, which definitely a mate would be.
It's like one step forward, two steps back. Even though I think deep down he knows how she really feels, but he's tensing and believing her in that she believes it. He knows how she really feels, but he's realizing maybe she doesn't, and she's still not ready to fully come to terms with it.
Well, speaking of, Feyre goes on to think in her inner monologue, quote, I wondered if he somehow didn't see it for the lie that it was, if he thought that that's indeed all I wanted. Yeah, Feyre, of course, in this moment of pure vulnerability, he believed you when you said that this is what you wanted, or at least believed that this is what you believe that you want. I really struggle with Feyre in this moment. Like, this pisses me off. Maybe it's because, for me at least, communication is number one for me in a relationship. And not being able to speak your mind is a big no-no. It is a big no-no. But Rhys's hands resume after he tenses up and is like, shit. He relaxes a little and his hands resume their roaming because we later learn he decided that he would take whatever he could get when it comes to her. So his hands come up to cup her breast and he says, quote, you have no idea how much I love these. Is this our confirmation that Rhys is a boob guy? Because I think so.
Oh, it definitely is. Unlike Xaden, who is definitely an ass man, as we had a full discussion, multiple discussions about during our Empyrean series deep dives.
I'm not going to even lie to you. I was at the gym the other day and I really didn't want to do a leg day. And I remembered that Xaden Ryerson is an ass man. And it definitely got me through said leg day. And I'm not even ashamed about it.
I just laugh because I can't even fathom going to the gym and having a leg day to begin with.
I'm not gonna lie, I could barely walk today. It's actually pretty pathetic. I look like Bambi. Feyre tries to turn around to reciprocate the touchy-touchy, but Rhys holds her to him so that she can't. Quote, I want to touch you first. Again, he has been waiting for 6 months for this moment, arguably a little bit more because he's been having dreams about her, and he's finally getting it. And Rhys gives her the more she's been asking for. And I want to just point out here, this is a highly alluring scene for many of us readers. I'll say specifically women, because many people have been in relationships where, let's just say the goal of the bedroom was not getting them off. They were not part of that equation. It was definitely one-sided and they were not the side. This here is so heart-thumping, kick your legs up in the air, wonderful to read, because this is a partner, specifically a male partner, saying, I want to put you first. And it's a reminder to us that this is very important in a relationship, to have someone who wants to give from the get-go and who thinks about the other person's pleasure just as much, if not more, than their own. And it goes both ways. I'm not saying it's just guy side or just one-sided. It goes both ways for sure. And I do want to say, maybe if I'd read Romantasy back in my 20s, my love life would have looked a lot better. I'll just say that.
Yeah. I'm just agreeing with you from my own perspective.
Oh.
Yes. This scene, it's actually my favorite intimate scene I've ever read.
Wow.
And I realize how big of a statement that is, but it's true. I actually love this scene more than chapter 55 and a lot of other iconic scenes that we get within the romantasy genre. Part of it is the buildup that we've been waiting hundreds of pages for. Part of it is the anticipation that there will be more. But this first scene of intimacy is so new and giving and alluring. And like Nicole said, it is empowering for so many of us, specifically women. It's okay to accept taking, accept this, I'll call it quiet worship, where sometimes these smaller moments that are emotionally charged are so overlooked just to get to intercourse. Which, don't get me wrong, that's absolutely wonderful too. But sometimes it's nice to see representation that this is enough, that this isn't just foreplay or a means to a bigger end, but it holds its own sense of intimacy and compassion and sexual drive and fulfillment. And I really love, I love that so much.
Yeah. A few things I do want to point out about this scene specifically. Number one, Rhys is fingering her for a minute, like a solid minute, before she turns around and, sick of her neck and ear getting so much of Rhys's mouth's attention, she kisses him. This is their first real kiss. Yes, they kissed under the mountain, but like we mentioned in the Starfall scene, the motivation to share a moment with each other was definitely not the motivation behind that kiss. Kind of love that their first kiss wasn't this big build-up moment, and instead it was a part of this big build-up scene. Yes, is a kiss romantic? Of course. Is it intimate? Yes, absolutely. And yes, there are some great first kiss scenes. We've covered them on the podcast. But the romance and the intimacy and sexual pull has been there with these two without a kiss, so much that I didn't even realize until the deep dive that this was their first, again, real kiss in this moment. The second thing I want to point out is, as they're making out, Feyre's reaching a climax, and Rhys says, quote, "You have no idea how much I," and then he cuts himself off and instead says, "Feyre." Was he going to say, "I love you"?
I figured he was going to say something along the lines of, "I've wanted to do this," something like that. But I love how instead he says her name multiple times. The pleasure he is getting from pleasuring her.
I love it. Third thing I want to point out, after Feyre's throes of pleasure, Rhys says that he's wanted to do that since the Court of Nightmares, but mostly he's wanted to do this. And then he takes his two fingers and sucks on them. The final thing I want to point out about this scene is that as Feyre goes to reach for him after her throes of pleasure, he stops her, telling her that when she gets a go at him, he wants no one around because, quote, "I'm going to let myself roar loud enough to bring down a mountain." I don't think a mountain actually came down in chapter 55, but there was definitely a roar and there was definitely a remote.
I definitely listened to this recently as I'm just ahead of our deep dive, and he does cause avalanches to come down because it's very snowy there, and so he causes multiple avalanches.
I stand corrected. And when he finally gets a full go at her, quote, "I want you splayed out on a table like my own personal feast." Well, wishes do come true, Rhys. Tables and all. These two fall asleep spooning, and Feyre notes that she didn't have a single nightmare and that she wakes up feeling safe, warm, and rested. Still in bed, Feyre turns to him and his eyes are open, and she says in her inner monologue, quote, "And I realized I might very well be content to do exactly that forever." My freaking heart. I don't know about you, Lex. I love this part of a relationship where you wake, everything's new, everything's exciting, and you wake up and you just stare at them, not like that, just a nice peaceful staring at them, and everything feels so just exciting and new. It's awesome. I love this for them, and it's fun to relive that through books.
I know, right? I'll even go on to say it's not even just in new relationships. Like, yes, that's definitely when I'll say it's you're most aware of it. But these moments don't happen very often anymore because the child usually wakes us up and joins us in bed.
Yeah.
But it's still so wonderful, like just like those few moments of quiet before the day starts and just like a quick moment of connection with your partner. And I love it.
Definitely. And the first time they fall asleep snuggling, all of those things that she has wanted, Feyre has wanted since chapter 1 of ACOTAR, safety, warmth, calm, she now has that. But it's not because of major, big external circumstances. It's because of whose arms she's tucked in. Feyre asks Rhys why he made that bargain with her under the mountain. And Rhys's answer is because he wanted to piss off Tamlin and he wanted to make a statement to Amarantha. And this was not the ooey gooey romantic answer that she was wanting to hear. And it's partly true.
Well, he does say, too, that he needed to keep her alive in a way that wouldn't be seen as merciful, which, like you said, is still partly true. It is true, but he's only telling her about 50% of the full story because she doesn't really realize it, but it is a very loaded question. When they struck the bargain, he may not have known yet that they were mates, although he did assume or at least wonder if that was the case. But he had already fallen in love with her because she had already thrown the Midgard wormbone at Amarantha just very recently before that. We'll get to the other 50% of the truer statement of this answer next episode. I can't believe we're almost there. So I'll hold off quoting chapter 54 for right now, and we'll just save the whole thing for next episode.
Well, I think he gives her only this part of the 50% because he's giving her exactly what she said she wanted last night, a fun distraction, and not the real reason of finding his way in with her, which is right up the alley of the reasons that she wanted. It's much more ooey gooey. It's him saying, I wanted to be around you.
Yes.
So
I cared about you. I was worried about you, and I needed to make sure that you would be okay and safe.
This is what happens, Feyre, when you don't tell someone the fucking truth and you say, I want fun and distraction when you don't. We will say goodbye, though, to an inn for now because we are back to training.
Real quick, while we're on the subject of powers, here, Feyre states that the wind she conjures is from the day court. But she has also summoned wind, or like air shields, which don't seem to belong to any court. So I'm guessing that there are nuances to how to wield air versus wind. Anyway.
I have no idea. But all day, they barely speak or touch, and they definitely do not talk about what occurred last night.
Even at the beginning of the day, Feyre wonders if she dreamed what happened the night before because of how he's acting. And of course, she follows suit because she's kind of following his lead with all of this here.
Well, and let's not forget that she also knows she did not dream it because she's like, I've got some soreness between my legs and I don't think that was an accident. So although Feyre can feel Rhys wanting to say something as they're out training, quote, I catch him watching me whenever I pause for a break, catch him opening up his mouth, then shutting it. Rhys wants to tell her everything.
Well, and now his initial reason for not telling her, because she was in love with another male, it no longer applies, especially after that interaction with Lucien. So he knows that the moment is coming. These chapters are building up to it as he internally struggles with how to handle the situation. Now his original reasoning, it's not an excuse anymore. But he's so scared to tell her this and figure out how to navigate this very delicate, groundbreaking information.
When she later confronts him about why he didn't tell her, quote, the other night you said you wanted distraction, you wanted fun, not a mating bond, not to someone like me, a mess. He is still haunted by those words, hence why he's opening his mouth and then shutting it, because he's like, oh my God, she doesn't want this. She doesn't want me. He still believes that she wouldn't want this much baggage that comes with a mating bond to him, which Rhys. He goes on to say, and to be quite honest, I'm quoting the whole damn thing from that passage, quote, you didn't think I wanted to tell you? You think I liked hearing you wanted me only for amusement and release? You think it didn't drive me out of my mind so completely that those bastards shot me out of the sky because I was too busy wondering if I should tell you or wait? Or maybe I should just take whatever pieces you offered me and be happy with it? Or that maybe I should let you go so you don't have a lifetime of assassins and high lords hunting you down for being with me? This is all just what's going through his head over and over throughout the day. This is so in character for Rhys. He feels like he is not worthy of such happiness and love. It's again, that so close, yet so far away. Finally, up in the sky though, Feyre asks, what dude? What's on your mind? Why are you being weird? And he says, quote, "There's one more story I need to tell you." Yeah, there's a whole chapter's worth. It's a long chapter. We'll get into it. She waits for him to go on, but he doesn't. Again, all those things we've just laid out are swirling through his head. So she gives him some incentive. Quote, "I don't walk away. Not from you."
We will get into Feyre's anger momentarily, but she does walk away. Not permanently, but she does walk away because she needs to process this info bomb by herself.
Yeah. And when she does walk away next chapter, he didn't know that wasn't a permanent walk away. He didn't know if she was coming back or not. She just left Rhys injured in the mud.
I can hear an L calling Feyre's name in the near future.
We will cover that also next episode.
I can't believe she's going to get an L in the chapter 54 episode.
Deserved, though. It's so deserved.
Yeah.
Look, I'm all for, like, when we're in a fight, you pause, you take time away. Like, Brett and I have, like, this, like, timeout thing, basically. But then you come back together. You're more clear-headed. But a full, like, this cuts deep, Feyre. This is, like, the time that you shouldn't call a timeout. But I'm getting ahead of myself, though.
Right now, in a moment of peace, calm, and after a night of finger bang bang, it is easy for Feyre to make this promise. But she will realize that the first time it is put to the test, she doesn't hold up to what she promised.
And Rhys opens his mouth to start to speak, which I guess they were going to have this conversation in the sky?
I mean, they are traveling most of the day. What else are they going to talk about?
Land! Put her on her feet! Like, don't...
It's a road trip, you know?
A road trip is not the
They don't have Fantasy Fangirls to listen to on their road trips like all of our listeners do, which amazing shouts to you all. I love seeing us on your road trips and how we literally keep you entertained like across the country because there's so much stinking content.
I will say this. You think a road trip is a good time to have this conversation when you're stuck in a car with someone?
I did not think of it that way.
Anyway, Rhys starts to speak and instead roars in pain, an arrow hitting him.
Oh shit, Hybern's attacking. We'll soon learn that there are several dozen attackers who ambush them with these ash arrows tipped in blood-bane poison with the purpose of taking Rhys down and setting a trap for Feyre.
Do we think that Lucien tipped off Hybern? And that's why there's so... Because, like, we know that there's a tracker on his power. We know he used powers yesterday, yada, yada. But there's also a lot of Hybern soldiers. So I wonder if it's simultaneously Lucien and thus Tamlin tipping them off as much as it is the power that he used.
I hope not. That's my best answer. I suppose it's definitely possible.
Word.
Though Lucien, he doesn't seem to trust Hybern to go after Rhys and Feyre. Plus, securing the alliance and bargain would have had to be done so fast if Lucien was behind this. It's definitely not impossible, though, considering Lucien's parting threat that he made. Maybe I'm just trying to defend him in this moment because... oh, that'd be really tough. It is interesting to think how that little bit of magic was done somewhere in this region, but not close by their current location whatsoever. Like, why didn't Hybern raid the inn since it seemed like an obvious place for them to stay the night? During my first read, that's honestly what I expected to have happen. How did Hybern find them this far away from their location where Lucien found them and Rhys used his magic? Feyre notes that they flew for most of the day. How in the world did they know exactly where Rhys and Feyre would be? Like, even if Lucien did tell them, they were still far away from where that was. I assumed that they were watching the skies and they spotted them flying, and then that's when they knew where to go. Maybe just need to put another tally down for plot convenience, though.
I think that's it.
You all know how I love when magic is incorporated in these stories. And here when Feyre is hunting these attackers down after they take Rhys is no different. She has winnowing dialed in. I'm so proud of her. And she even shifts her eyes to be like that of a nocturnal animal so she can see better in the darkness. She is embracing this darkness. This isn't survival Feyre. This is the Huntress Feyre, a fucking badass who is using her shape-shifting way more creatively than Tamlin. Once again, through her tracking skills, Feyre figures out that 24 have taken Rhys away, but there had been more for the initial attack, and they all left tons of ash arrows behind that our girl collects to then use against them. She uncovers the trap they've laid for her. They took Rhys's clothes in one direction and him in the other, as they expect her to go after him and choose the more likely path. But guess what these sneaky attackers didn't anticipate? A finger bang bang session the other night. Feyre's scent is all over Rhys, so she knows to track the path with her own scent, not just Rhys's.
I also wonder if a little bit of it is they finally had a sexual moment and it's a mating bond scent. So like, you know how like when you like mating bond, there's like that scent difference, but no matter what, their scents are mingled. As Feyre is inspecting the cave before she winnows in and starts her killing spree 100% run, she sees Rhys and notices that there are 7 arrows in his wings. Again, it's that number 7. Last episode, we discussed the significance, most specifically the religious significance of the number 7, meaning complete or full. Here, I don't know if the 7 arrows are there to describe it. I truly just think sometimes a 7 is SJM's favorite number or her go-to number.
It is a frequently used magic number, definitely. It also feels like a good, like, not too little, but not too much kind of number.
Feyre has killed before, yes, but never like this. She is using ash arrows to kill right now, but she made them like a double-edged dagger. She's so freaking smart. I love that. She used an ash arrow to kill Andris back in ACOTAR. She used ash daggers to kill the 2 High Fae in Task 3 of ACOTAR, which... Pause. I can't believe we haven't done this yet. It is Woodwatch, everybody.
And not the fun Rhys kind.
No, that's next episode. Ashwood from the ash tree is a symbol of immortality. However, in Norse mythology, it is often associated with the Yggdrasil, aka the Tree of Life, a tree that connects all 9 worlds, most notably the realms of the gods, Asgard, the earth, Midgard, yes, Midgard, and the underworld, Niflheim. Despite being also that, I'm sorry if my Norse mythology pronunciation was absolute shit. I did my best. I even have it phonetically written out in the outline. I'm trying. Despite being called the Tree of Life, Yggdrasil symbolizes both life and death. There's your Ashwood watch. With Andris, she was killing for survival and later went on to feel sorry, and especially when she got to know Tamlin, the Spring Court, Prythian, etc. With the 2 High Fae, that kill utterly destroyed her to do such a thing with such cold-blooded murder. So what's the difference here? At all 3 times, she is killing for someone she loves, her family with Andris, Tamlin with the trial, and Rhys here. But while she retracted within herself for the others, this one she is fueled by it, the blood on her hands making her move forward.
Quote, and the blood on my hands felt different from what it had been like under the mountain. This blood I savored, blood for every drop they'd spilled of his. Yes, this is because of multiple reasons. For one, the people who she was killing during the 3rd trial were innocent, and that was the whole reason that made it so terrible that she had to kill them, was because they were innocent. In this case, there's also the mating bond, and Rhys is in danger. But also, Feyre is a different person now. Darkness, morally gray, and all. Here she is living up to the Inner Circle motto of doing whatever it takes to protect your own. And if they hurt those you love, make them suffer. One particular line that always sticks with me is that, quote, winnow strike, winnow strike. It's almost like a dance for her, and it's crazy. After she has killed all of the Hybern soldiers in this group, remember there are 2 that split up, Feyre gets them to a cave and quickly realizes she needs to get the arrows out of Rhys's wings. Her desperation and panic are woven into this writing so well, where you are in her POV and so gripped with fear for Rhys. But she has to keep a level head. She has to keep the 2 of them alive, and they are still very much in danger with those other Hybern forces nearby and the creatures coming out after dark. Not to mention, Rhys is badly injured, and this is not her area of expertise. She's not a healer.
Not able to snap the arrows in fear of splinters, she begins sawing the ash arrows to pull them out of Rhys's wings.
My heart breaks every time Rhys encourages her to do it. You know, just like, do it, as he like grits his teeth telling her to do this. He knows what has to be done, and he's trying to let her know this terrible temporary pain is okay. Letting her know she can do this. She can do this.
But he was in too much pain and she was working too slowly. So she begins to distract him with a story. One summer, when she was 17, Elaine bought Feyre some red, blue, and yellow paints. They happened to have some extra spending money, so she bought her a nest of presents, which is like, pause, really sweet of Elaine.
But we've never doubted Elaine's sweetness.
That's true.
Just pointed out her obliviousness. Elaine's love language, though, is absolutely gift giving, or at least like she's a fantastic gift giver, which usually people who are really good gift givers, that is their love language.
Yes, absolutely. I will say I'm curious to know if she's ever going to know about Asriel regifting the necklace he gave her and he gifted it to Gwen instead. Because for someone whose love language is gifts, ouch, that would hurt. But I'm getting way ahead of myself. Fae-vorite painted on their table, which we saw last book, the foxglove that she painted on it. She painted on the cabinets, the doorway, and an old black dresser. On that dresser, she painted Nesta's drawer in flames. Quote, "She was always angry, always burning. I think she and Amren would be fast friends. I think she would like Valaris despite herself." I love that foreshadowing for Nesta loving Valaris. Yes, definitely despite herself, and how her and Amren will be fast friends, because they will, unfortunately, with some falling out, but they will be fast friends. On Elaine's drawer, she painted flowers. Here she mentions how it was roses, begonias, and irises. But in ACOTAR, when she was looking at the dresser, she sees roses and violets, which, friendly reminder, here's our plant watch. Roses stand for love, romance, and also mystery. Violets stand for modesty and purity. So that was Elaine last book. Here in ACOMAF, we have roses, again, love, romance, mystery. Begonias are often a bad omen or caution. Yikes. And irises are for hope and wisdom. Fae-vorite also notes how Elaine would also like Valaris. Quote, "Although she would probably cling to Asriel just to have some peace and quiet." She goes on to think about how they would actually be quite a handsome couple, only if Asriel stopped loving more. Wow, is this a big Elreal moment?
All of this right here really does make you wonder about the 3 Bat Boys and the 3 Archeron sisters all being together. I'd forgotten about this line.
You and I were very, I won't speak for you. I was very, I'll say anti-Asriel and Elaine at the start of this deep dive. Let's just say as I'm going through this deep dive, I'm like, I'm starting to see it more. I'm starting to see it a lot more.
I really don't mind one way or the other. I won't say I don't care, because I do care more about just the good storytelling that comes out of it. And I think that's just how you and I both are here.
Yeah. There's
and
not like a
when
hill
we do
I'm
talk about that
on.
good storytelling, it's moments like this that could be some really wonderful foreshadowing. I will say, though, after that bonus chapter with how things ended, like, I don't know. I have no idea what's in store for the future. Like, I just don't. And I am so just along for the ride.
Yes. Like, I think you and I can both confidently say there is not a hill we're wanting to die on when it comes to Elaine, when it comes to Asriel, Gwen, or Lucian. We just want them all to be happy.
We just want everybody to be happy, yes. And it's an SJM, so of course, I'm pretty sure everyone will end up being happy at the end.
Actually, Asriel's going to die, and then he's going to come back to life.
Yeah, right.
If Asriel dies and stays dead, and he's the one person in all of SJM who does, a main character.
Don't get me started on the Cassian.
We're not covering that right now. I refuse to talk about that until it's time. I refuse. Anyway, when Rhys asks Fae-vorite what she painted for herself, Fae-vorite tells him that she painted the night sky, and Rhys goes utterly still. We will obviously talk about this from Rhys's POV in excruciating detail next episode. Can you tell it's going to be a big episode next week? But on a first read, you think that Rhys is going still because it's like, oh, I was always meant to be in the night court, da-da-da. Like, it's very wholesome and one note. But we will learn the real reason he stills is because he sent those images into her mind. And while maybe she hasn't seen him in her dreams, in her visions, like he was seeing her, she was still connected to him in some way.
And he didn't know if that image reached her, but here he gets confirmation that it did. And this has been something he has held on to for years. She's sharing this even before she knows about the mating bond and that he had any involvement. It's just so poetic. I love it so much. So with that said, from Rhys's POV, let's quickly shift over to Fae-vorite's reasoning for painting the night sky. She admits as she's cutting out the 7th arrow that she never knew why she painted the night sky because she was never out at night. She was too tired and had go to sleep. But she wonders if she actually painted it because some part of her knew she was meant to have this future. She was always someone who would be quiet and enduring, who would have beauty to those who knew where to look, and if anyone feared her, then she didn't care to be around them anymore.
Quote, "I wonder if, even in my despair and hopelessness, I was never truly alone. I wonder if I was looking for this place, looking for you all. This is the magic of found family and this particular aspect of the story. But it wasn't just Feyre looking for this family. Yes, there was influence from Rhys sending the Knight's Guide. She was also looking for a family just to call her own. Before Rhys falls asleep, he murmurs, quote, "I was looking for you too. There you are. I've been looking for you." But we will cover that next episode. It's the next day and Rhys ain't looking so good.
Feyre's soft begs of Rhys pull my heart every time. She doesn't know anything about poisons or how to get help. She's all on her own and is gripped with the terrible fear of not knowing what to do. But someone's life is literally in her hands right now. And not just someone, the male she loves, even if she's not technically willing to admit it to herself yet. But come on, we all know it at this point, right?
So after a few hours of hoping and hoping he gets better, and nope, that's not happening, Feyre sets off, a cloak in hand.
I love how Feyre resorts to this. She is out of options, out of answers, and that is what is making her panic so much. She has no answers in this life or death situation. So instead of doing nothing and continuing to wait around, she does the only thing she can think of. She may not have the answers, but she knows who does. And that's her only option. Find the Suriel who does have the answers she needs. She can't rely on anyone else right now because she has no way of knowing if they'll come. But she knows what she is capable of, which is trapping the Suriel. And she's even got Alice's tip, which is way better than Lucian's, to catch the Suriel, which is get that cloak, girl.
Well, speaking of which, Feyre sets her trap and waits, and about 2 hours go by. And I'm curious what the chicken Suriel bait time versus the cloak Suriel bait time, what the difference is.
So I think we both did this. I went back to the first time she ensnared the Suriel in Akatar, and it doesn't give a specific time. Yes. All we know is that she waited and waited with the afternoon sun creeping overhead, enough time for her to get hungry and eat too. So from that description, I'm definitely betting it was more than 2 hours.
I'm guessing it was like an hour, probably more like 2 hours shorter with cloak versus chicken.
I think you're right here. My biggest question, though, is what was the Suriel doing at this moment in the Night Court? They are in the northern mountains of the Night Court, while last year they were both in the Spring Court. Can the Suriel be in another court and like a little alarm goes off telling it that there's a fallen cloak or a dead chicken thousands of miles away? Was he following Feyre's location out of curiosity of her? Is it a complete coincidence that the same Suriel in the opposite end of Prythian is here? More plot convenience, perhaps?
I'm going with a mix of plot convenience. And I kind of like the idea that the Suriel was not following her. Like, it's not been like a shadow of hers for the past year. But maybe, like, I think there's a Feyre alarm because she was kind of it. So I think there's a Feyre alarm for the Suriel. Which, speaking of, there's a crack and the Google Suriel. It has been caught. We missed you, Google. I'm even wearing my Suriel shirt today. I'm so happy. So in case you forgot, here's what this horror creature looks like. Its body is made of worn bone with long fingers that click, click, click against each other. It has a lipless mouth with 2 large brown teeth, and its cloak is looking busted. But we don't have time to waste. As the Suriel will note, she has 2 questions, which, side note, saying she has 2 questions, because it's not a question mark, it is a statement. It is very specific. Is the Suriel able to like read her mind and be like, oh, you have 2 questions. That's what I'm leaning towards. Or here's my crack theory. Did the Suriel know that they got gypped by the bone carver? And he's like, I'll grant you your 2 questions that he gypped you on.
But he will give her 7 questions instead and a bonus answer. So he technically gives her 8 answers here. He really does like Feyre. I love our Google Suriel so much. I will say it's kind of funny because I understand how he's supposed to be absolutely terrifying, but we're only ever told in the story how terrifying he is. We don't personally experience it on the page because he's so helpful, and he and Feyre have this, I'll call it, respectful relationship with one another. In my annotations, when Feyre thinks what I was to hunt would be worse, I wrote, but is he? The Suriel comments what fascinating changes a year has wrought on Thera, on the world. And honestly, that's an understatement. She was a human, brand new to Prythian, and desperate to get home to her family. And of course, the courts were under Amarantha's power. Now, obviously, she is Fae and trying to save a different High Lord in a different court. Prythian is free of Amarantha, although admittedly something worse is coming their way. A year is next to nothing for the Suriel, who is ancient even compared to most of the Fae in our story. But so much can happen in a short amount of time.
Question number 1 from Feyre. What poison was used in the arrows? The answer is bloodbane. Note that in ACOMAF, this nullifying poison is called bloodbane, but in ACOWAR, it will be called Faebane.
As anyone who took our ACOTAR trivia at Starfall will know.
I will say this, according to the wiki, they are the same thing, apparently. Faebane / blood, which, sorry, if I counted your answer wrong. But Faebane and bloodbane is a chemical compound in the form of a blue stone, which is used with the ore to make handcuffs and chains from Hybern, but it can also be ground up, which is what Rhys has here, and it's on the arrow tips. Question number 2, where do I find the cure? Google. In the forest. This must be the 2001 Google, because what kind of an answer is that? Feyre begs Google not to be cryptic. So take 2 is 2024 Google. Her blood is rich with the healing gifts of the High Lord of Dawn. So your blood, you're in the forest though. So it was right.
Still count that as question 3. What is the cure is different than where is the cure? Technically.
That's a really great point, actually. Good point.
And that was question number 4. And that's when the Suriel is like, okay, Cursebreaker, I helped you. We're even from you saving me from the Naga last time. Don't test me. He actually doesn't say that, but the meaning's there. Feyre even recognizes this as a test of honor, and he's doing her a favor for the arrow she shot to save him last time. Is she as good-hearted as the Suriel believes her to be? And she'll release it now that she has her answers.
Indeed, because even with a polite thank you for your help, which I love how Feyre's on high level urgency, Rhys is about to die. She's like, thank you so much. She's still politeness. I love it. She goes to set the Suriel free. But one more thing, Feyre darling.
It's bonus answer you didn't ask for, but thank you for doing the honorable thing time.
Quote. If you wish to speed your mate's healing, in addition to your blood, a pink flower weed sprouts by the river. Make him chew it.
Record scratch!
I remember vividly listening to this for the first time because the word didn't even register to me because I was listening to the audiobook and it was said so casually as it's supposed to be. It wasn't until Feyre is like, mate? Excuse me? That I sprung out of my seat like a chicken. I hit the go back button 30 times on my phone and just stared at the wall, clutching my headphones. Many people reading this for the first time did not see this plot twist coming. Yes, some of you did. Gold star for you. That's awesome. I'm not talking to you right now. But those of us who had this out-of-body experience when Google goes on to say, quote, the High Lord of the Night Court is your mate. This chapter is one of the reasons that SJM is such a fabulous storyteller.
This book hasn't mentioned mates a whole lot, on purpose, so not to draw attention to the budding romance between Feyre and Rhys. SJM wanted us to know about the concept of mates, absolutely, but not remind us of it. I did an ebook search and the word mate or mates dropped frequently when Feyre was in the Spring Court, always in relation to Tamlin. The only time it's mentioned with Rhys was when he told her about his parents' mating bond, and even then it wasn't a romantic conversation, but rather a primal territorial one. And even that mention with Rhys was in chapter 16. Not once since then have mates been mentioned, even though on a reread, the mating bond between these two have been all over the pages.
God, I love that. Quick side note. I love that Google knows that she has 2 questions, and yet it has no idea that it's just here's a knowledge bomb I'm dropping on you. I'm assuming it knows, or it assumes, I should say, that Feyre knows her and Rhys are mates. That's why it's let me drop some knowledge that's super casual.
My headcanon is that the Suriel thought she knew they were mates deep in her heart and was surprised she didn't know on the surface, I guess is the right way of saying it.
Yeah.
So it brought it up as but you know this, right? Again, it did not have to give her that bonus answer. Feyre did not ask a question related to this at all. It freely gave her this extra information before she was about to set it free. And when she's absolutely taken aback, the Suriel's all like, oh, that's interesting. Sipping tea with the Suriel, indeed. The biggest busybody of them all. Stirring the cauldron of drama. I just fucking love the Suriel.
So I have to bring up another option. Do we think that when the Suriel says, stay with the High Lord, last book, it actually thought she knew it meant Rhys?
I think it understood the double meaning that was conveyed, like we talked about extensively during ACOTAR episode 3. But I also think the Suriel figured she would eventually end up with Rhys. However, the Suriel doesn't seem to know much about the future, only the present and the past, which could mean it knew that they were mates, but in order to ultimately be united together, she had to stay with Tamlin for the time being. I'll be honest, we need this confusion answered by SJM herself. Has anyone ever asked her about the Suriel's meaning of stay with the High Lord in an interview or anything like that? And if so, I personally haven't come across it, though I admit I haven't looked that hard. If so, please let us know, because trying to analyze this and making it make sense makes my head hurt.
I just remembered something. In ACOWAR, she says to the Suriel, stay with the High Lord, you meant Rhys.
And he confirms yes. But
Yeah.
again, there is that double meaning that I do think was a part of this.
Okay. Feyre, like all of us readers, has an out-of-body experience. Quote, mate. Rhysand was my mate. Not lover, not husband, but more than that. A bond so deep, so permanent that it was honored over all others. Rare, cherished. Not Tamlin's mate, Rhysand's. And her next question to the Suriel is, does he, Rhys, know?
Question number 6, because question 5 was, what did you say?
The answer is yes, Rhys does know. The Suriel mentions how she is feeling too much too fast and it cannot read her, which, fuck yeah, obviously.
So for one, there's a part of her that is settling into something she's known all along. She's also replaying what Rhys has said to her and putting the puzzle pieces together. She's also surprised by this new information because holy shit, this is immortal, life-altering information. She doesn't identify this feeling yet, but there's also relief at this revelation because the man she loves, she has a soul bond connection with, meaning her and Tamlin were doomed from the start. And that make-believe rulebook that I've been going on and on about, she's been holding on to doesn't even exist because mates are a whole other level that her and Tamlin could never even possibly touched. And most prominently, she's feeling betrayed that she seems to be the last to know this monumentally huge information. More on that last feeling in a moment. I also love how she interrupts the Suriel who is about to tell her when Rhys knew. She needs to hear it from Rhys himself. He may have broken her trust by not telling her this vital information, but she still trusts him enough to tell her the truth once when she confronts him. And she needs to hear this from him, and she recognizes that immediately.
Feyre asks how on earth he and her could be mates because mates are matched. They are equals.
Question number 7.
Quote from the Suriel. He is the most powerful High Lord to ever walk this earth. You are new. You are made of all 7 High Lords, unlike anything. Are you two not similar in that? Are you two not matched? The Suriel is like, girl, have some confidence.
But yes, they are matched in so many ways. Different and unique forms of power, of course, but so much more beyond that.
They are both equal dreamers, a side of Feyre that was shut down for a very long time. They both love fiercely. They put those who they love first, even if it means their own sacrifice, quite literally. And they are both extremely powerful in their own right. And the Suriel is like, well, this was fun, and vanishes.
Feyre collects the pink weed. Just love that little detail of her ripping it out of the ground, showcasing how angry she is instead of picking it. She goes back to the cave, and despite making moves toward healing Rhys, having him eat the weed and drink her blood, she's being hostile towards him. And while part of her hates that she's acting this way and recognizes that she shouldn't be when he's wounded, Feyre is extremely angry and can't help it.
Think back to ACOTAR when she was not told about the blight or the curse, and while yes, they couldn't tell her, she ended up losing her life because this information was not bestowed upon her. Then a new court with people she was beginning to trust, people who were friends, her family, and she made them promise that she would never be used, never be lied to or left in the dark. Here is Rhys having kept the most important thing in her immortal existence from her.
She tells him he's not allowed to ask questions, only answer them. In other words, she is not ready to answer his questions or have this be a two-way conversation. She needs answers that have been withheld from her for months, and Rhys is officially in the hot seat, and not from his temperature, which is luckily getting better right now because of her healing him. And then, quote, "How long have you known that I'm your mate?" The very first question she asks is the exact answer the Suriel tried to tell her, but she cut it off. It feels very fitting that this is the way to kick off the conversation and reveal that she now knows. Quote, "Rhys stilled, the entire world stilled. He swallowed. Feyre." Talk about no shit moment for our wounded half Illyrian soul-bonded partner. Rhys is a Ravenclaw, though, and quickly puts two and two together. Feyre ensnared the Suriel to find answers for Rhys and found a few too many answers. Interesting to think about how this is the only conclusion he comes up with. How else could she have known? Or rather, known and be so upset that he didn't tell her? Technically, she could have figured this out while tracking him and saving him, but he's smart and recognizes she wasn't livid with him when she left the cave in a panic of how to help him, and she comes back without her cloak, knowing how to help and extremely angry about some vital information very few people know about. It's heartbreaking how panic flashes over his features. And I got to admit, a little funny how he chews again at the plant. I have such a vivid image in my mind of this. Quote, "As if he knew that he wanted to be at his full strength to face me." From his eventual answer, we learn that he has suspected they were mates for a while, since I'll say around Calamai. But he's known for certain since Amarantha was killing Feyre. Wait, what? That was over half a year ago! And then he really knew when he felt it snap into place between them during their last encounter on the balcony of Under the Mountain. Because you see, when Feyre was made, it seems to have heightened the smell of their bond. That is its own loaded sentence, because I have to ask the question I've peppered throughout this podcast deep dive. Why would the Cauldron, the Mother, Fate, whatever, bond a human and the most powerful High Lord of the Night Court? Fate led them down this path together to bring these two together. Fate made Feyre into a High Fae. It was not just a coincidence of her dying under the mountain, but true fate that ultimately led to her being with the most powerful High Lord in history. And what's more, as Amren and Mor have said, during a time of oncoming war, where she will end up being a crucial piece to saving the world. I appreciate that fate does not play a prominent role in this story, and there's nothing like a prophecy, at least in this world at this time, so those little nudges of fate are not obvious or take away from the story or the story is structured around it, but it is extra context specifically to their love story, to this world-saving journey. But back to the present moment. Feyre asks when he was going to tell her, which, yes, that is a very valid question. He replies, and yep, just gonna quote it, quote, "I don't know. I wanted to yesterday, or whenever you noticed that it wasn't just a bargain between us. I hoped you might realize when I took you to bed." And he cuts himself off. Let's dissect this real quick. He wanted to yesterday. That's obvious when they were flying and he actively debated telling her while in flight before they were ambushed. Or whenever Feyre would notice their bond wasn't just the bargain. We've pointed out whenever Feyre asks about the bargain bond and Rhys explains it with the underlying context that he is talking about their mating bond far more than the bargain, which is nothing in comparison. He's been waiting for her to recognize this bond as so much more than their bargain. But I gotta say, Rhys, Feyre doesn't know any better. She is new to magic. She is new to being Fae and bargains and bonds. So she is relying on you to help her navigate what all of this is and means. The only real way she would discover the difference is if she made another bargain, which she will in ACOWAR, and notice how different the bond is from hers with Rhys. Only then would she truly understand how unique and deep their bond is. But then they're also Damati, so that even more muddles the waters. And lastly, he hoped she might realize when he took her to bed, which, let's remember, they have every intention of doing, when he can splay her on a table for his own personal feast and fuck her against a wall and roar so loudly that the mountains come down around them. When they bangity bang, the bond would solidify, as we all know what happens in chapter 55. and he'd hoped that's when she'd realize that their mental tether would strengthen and become unstoppable. It's definitely possible she would recognize this, but again, Feyre has no experience to go off of here. Take Nesta when she and Cassian consummate their mating bond, and Nesta doesn't realize it with disastrous consequences.
Great fucking point. Oh my God.
What I'm trying to say with all of this is Rhys was hoping that Feyre would figure this out on her own, but they are coming from different backgrounds, as similar of people as they may be. He has context about mating bonds that she never possibly could, which is one more reason why she feels so in the dark. She needs to be told about these things because she doesn't innately know, having been a human for most of her young life.
Well, we also have to note that if she had figured it out on her own and she had been like, oh, this is something extra. And he's like, yeah, I've known for half a year. Does he seriously think she wouldn't be just as pissed of like, why didn't you tell me? So I love Rhys. We see multiple times throughout the series, Rhys not telling someone something because of pain behind it, because of him worrying about their reactions. And not that this is the same thing as not telling her that she's going to die in childbirth, but it's a pattern of his, and I just want to point that out here.
Then there's also like this kind of confrontation. Of course, he has his own reasons that we have absolutely talked about, and he's terrified, and he's insecure, and he thinks he's a mess, and all of this. He doesn't think he's worthy of it.
Yeah.
And he's been avoiding the inevitable here.
Oh, yeah. Then there's also the fact that Amren and Mor know, and Cassian and Azriel suspect. There's an embarrassment and fury that comes with being the last to know something, especially when it's about her. This is like the most terrible example, but like, let's say you forgot to put on deodorant that day and you just smell really bad and everyone around you knows, and you're like one person finally tells you at the end of the day, hey, like you smell bad. And you're like, oh my God, I'm so embarrassed because everyone knew and you didn't. Again, that's a terrible example, but it's honestly all I could think of on the fly here. Like Lexi emphasized, mating bonds are foreign to Feyre, and there's that extra level of embarrassment too of not knowing how this works, not being able to identify it clearly when everyone else, or at least Amren and Mor specifically, had. I mean, to be fair, Rhys tells Mor, but she doesn't know that right now. But the most important point of her anger here is, quote, I don't want to hear you tell me that you decided I was to be kept in the dark while your friends knew, while you all decided what was right for me. What happened in the spring court? Others were constantly making decisions about Feyre's life without her getting to have a say. Here, where choice has been so prominent in her story at the Night Court, this is utter betrayal for her. Like we discussed last episode, Feyre, when it comes to anger, she can get very tunnel vision. And honestly, same. Right now, she is not thinking about his side of the story. She's not thinking about her promises that she made yesterday about never walking away. She's not thinking about any of the trust, the friendship, the love that they've built up together. Right now, she's in, I need to punch you in the gut mode. And honestly, I get it. Feyre's heart is breaking at this betrayal of trust from the person she has come to trust most of all. Quote, not as my heart ached so viciously, I realized it had somehow been repaired these last few months, repaired by him, and now it hurt. Rhys, being the good male that he is, even if he did keep this from Feyre, he sees how heartbroken she is and does what he has always promised her. He listens to her when she shares what she needs when she makes this choice. He respects it, even if it means he can't spend the rest of his life with her. And he gathers the strength to winnow them back to the Illyrian camp. We will pick up on this during next week's iconic episode where Feyre will process all of these feelings and work through them. Spoiler alert, it's got a happy ending. Get it? In more ways than 1, 2, or even 3.
While we already highlighted key foreshadowing moments, let's turn our full focus onto foreshadowing for the rest of this book and other important moments in the series. Feyre realizes that she wishes she had wings like her Illyrian friends. Quote, great, powerful wings so I might fly as they did, so I might see the world and all it had to offer. In just a few chapters, which we did indeed cover in this episode, she uses Tamlin's powers to transform into an Illyrian, much to Lucian's horror. And then in ACOWAR, Azriel will indeed teach her how to fly. And hey, Feyre, you'll also love those wings during banging and bang time with your mate.
little too much because then it causes major problems. Moore mentions how she's had lovers, but ... I get bored. That ... is doing a lot of heavy lifting there. We will learn that she does lie with males, but she does much prefer females. She gets bored with males, though, that's for sure.
Cassian has been trying to build an aerial fighting unit of Illyrian females for 100 years. That just hits you in the feels, knowing that he finally gets a real opportunity to train these females. They may not be able to fly, but they are Valkyries through and through, and he is so proud. He waited 100 years for what happens in Silver Flames, and that's just mating bond stuff aside, fuzzy feelings.
When explaining the blood rite, which Rhys does this episode, we didn't really touch on it because, to be honest, we had way more other things to cover. Rhys mentions how Cassian, Azriel, and him were each dumped in different locations, but killed their way through the mountain to get to each other. We will see another trio do just that: Emery, Gwen, and Nesta. It is time to sip some tea with the Suriel. Every episode, Lexi sips some tea and walks us through a world-building topic, this week with the actual Suriel, to help us better understand the world and the people in it.
Today's Suriel topic is Illyrians. Can you believe we haven't covered the Illyrians yet in our Suriel Teatime? While this topic may be overdue, like many of these first half of the series Suriel segments, today's Illyrian focus will be more of an overview, giving us a great foundation to build on for future Suriel Teatimes, because this is a hefty topic in the ACOTAR world. So let's dive in. Starting with, what are Illyrians? They're sexy bad boys, that's what they are. Illyrians are a warrior race of fairies who reside in the northern region of Illyria in the Night Court. They've got a reputation of being a violent, misogynistic, and warmongering people. They are not high fae and do not consider themselves as lesser fairies. They're just Illyrians, as Cassian points out. However, high fae, specifically those in the Court of Nightmares, look down on them as lesser fairies. These high fae consider them as nothing more than expendable aerial cavalry at best and mindless soldier grunts at worst. Illyrians were created and bred by the Daglin more than 15,000 years ago, with the sole purpose to be warriors. They originally migrated from the Myrmidons, I do not know if I pronounced that correctly, but let's hope so, which is a rock formation south of the Night Court that borders the Night Court and the Day Court. Illyrian physical characteristics include tan, golden brown skin tones, eye colors that are usually hazel or brown, and darker shades of hair varying from black to brown. They also have rounded ears, kind of like humans, unlike the high fae. Most notably, Illyrians have large bat-like wings. Illyrians do learn to fly when they are extremely young. Think toddlers, like learning how to walk and fly right around the same time there. They are trained to protect them at all costs. Their wings are their most important and valued body part. These wings are also very sensitive. There's a rumor that their wingspan directly correlates to the size of their penis, but alas, we may never truly know because our inner circle seems to have forgotten to bring out the measuring stick. Illyrians have their own distinct culture and traditions, and mostly because of this, they don't like outsiders, especially high fae who try to tell them what to do. They are obsessed with lineage and have their own princes and lords among their race. War camp leaders have the title of lords, but we don't know much else about their nobility and how it factors into their unique society. The only other thing we do know about these lords is that Azriel's father was one, and he, I think, had a small castle with a wife and trueborn children, and a dungeon that, unfortunately, Azriel knew too well. We have to talk about how Illyrians treat their females. It's common practice to clip the wings of females after their first bleeding so they cannot fly. Males claim it is to keep the females safe, but really it's to keep them grounded and under control for breeding. Clipping is an incision in the central tendon that makes their wings unable to support them in the air. So while these clipped females can move their wings, they will never be able to fly again. Rhys banned this standard practice when he became High Lord, but the tradition runs deep in Illyrian society and is still done deep in the mountains at faraway camps. During Amarantha's reign and Rhys was trapped with her, this practice returned in full force. Since Rhys's return, however, he's ensured the ban is upheld again. Females are also traditionally not allowed to train, whereas the males are of course expected to. Rhys and Cassian are trying to change that, but few of the war camps will allow the females to train. And in fact, some camps have issued decrees that if a female is caught got training, she is deemed unmarriageable. Tattoos are also an important part of Illyrian culture. Once Illyrians are initiated as warriors, they receive tattoos specifically for luck and glory on the battlefield. A slightly random fact about Illyrians, no true Illyrian ever makes a home with only one exit, and stairs should be narrow so only one Illyrian warrior can fit, another safety precaution for all homes. While Illyrian war camps will need its own Suriel segment, we can't not talk about these war camps in this discussion. These war camps are nestled in the northern mountains of the Night Court, and these mountains are cold even in springtime. Illyrians pick these locations for the camps to ensure only the strongest among them survive. The war camp leaders are addressed as lords, like I mentioned earlier, and the war camps function independently of one another. Think of them as their own small towns. They may raid or feud with one another, but during times of war, these war camps unite under the High Lord of the Night Court and become one Illyrian legion, which, by the way, is the largest standing army in Prythian. When Illyrian males are 8 years old, they begin their warrior training. Meanwhile, Illyrian females are expected to do the domestic labor like cooking, cleaning, and child rearing. A few known Illyrian camps include Windhaven, where Rhys, Azriel, and Cassian were trained, and where Emery lives. There's also Ironcrest, which is a large war camp that is a rival of Windhaven. We'll again talk more about those a little bit later. Now, how do you become a true Illyrian warrior? You must participate in the Blood Rite. Again, this will have its own Suriel segment, definitely in Silver Flames, but here's the overview. The Blood Rite is an annual week-long event where these Illyrians go unarmed into the mountains and must survive without magic, like their siphons, weapons, or other necessities or supplies. All they have is the clothes on their back. Their wings are also bound. The purpose is that they must rely only on their training and survival skills. A few hundred of these Illyrian wannabe warriors head into the mountains at the start of the week, but not all come out because yes, they do kill one another, or the elements or the mountainous creatures kill them. Basically, just try to survive the week. If you survive the week, hooray! You're an Illyrian warrior. But there's different levels of success depending on how far you got up Ramiel, which is a specific mountain in the Illyrian mountains. The first level, the bottom level, is Arcostian, who are the Illyrian warriors who don't make it to the mountain, but they do survive the week. Then we have Aristians, the ones who do make it to the mountain but don't reach the top. And lastly, we have the Corinthians, the Illyrian warriors who scale the summit and are considered the elite warriors. There are very, very few of those in Illyrian history. Again, we will get to that at a later time. The area around Ramiel is closed the rest of the year to prevent novices from scouting and having an advantage for the Blood Rite. Now, some Illyrians have something called siphons, which is a magical jewel that channels their innate power and enables them to control and use their power with precision. Siphons are gifted to pure Illyrian warriors with this large amount of power, and their power must be compatible with the siphon. These siphons help them channel their power, empty their power when necessary. Otherwise, the build-up power can literally drive one insane. I mean that literally. Siphons are a big advantage in battle because they allow their wielders to transform their raw power into a variety of things like shields, weapons, and armor. Siphons do not, however, hold an infinite amount of power, and they can run out. Like I was saying earlier, it can empty their power there. If an Illyrian is powerful enough to have a siphon, they will only have one, unless you're a badass like Cassian and Azriel, who each have 7. These siphon jewels range in colors, with the most common being red or blue, and the color of the magic will be the same as the color of the jewel. For example, Cassian has red siphons, so his shields are a transparent red. Cassian and Azriel usually wear only 2 siphons apiece, and then don their other 5 when they have their armor on. Illyrians have little magical gifts beyond this killing power. Remember, it's bred into them over thousands and thousands of years. However, Illyrians, or at least as Azriel proves, can also be shadow singers, but they are exceptionally rare and not solely an Illyrian power. Last fact about Illyrians for today's Suriel Teatime is that they can share a mating bond with a high fae, as we know from our story in several instances. But also, if you are a high fae female, or probably any other kind of fairy, and get impregnated by an Illyrian, it's bad. It's bad, friends. It's real, real bad. If the female is not Illyrian herself, but the baby in her womb is part Illyrian and has wings, then it is very probable that both mother and baby will die during birth, because only an Illyrian female's pelvis is shaped specifically for children with wings to pass through. For a high fae female, the baby will get stuck during labor, and there is no magic, or apparently a C-section, to help mom mom or babe. So unfortunately, most of the time it results in death. If by a miracle they do survive, the labor would have been so brutal that they come close to death, or the mother's body is so altered by birth that she can never have another child. This makes half Illyrians extremely rare because Illyrian women hardly ever marry and reproduce outside of their communities. Rhys is an exception because his Illyrian mother was mated to the High Lord of the Night Court, who was, of course, High Fae. And there you have it, friends. That is our Illyrians, or at least Illyrians Part 1 for Suriel Teatime.
Now let us move on to our favorite moments.
Once again, Cassian proves just how much of an empath he is when we learn how training has been going with him over the past few days when Rhys was keeping his distance from Feyre. Cassian kept Feyre company during these tough days, continuing to train her and show her how to use an Illyrian blade. They talked about everything, their childhoods, hunting, food, everything except Rhysand. He knew she needed a distraction and was happy to be that for her, happy to connect with her and keep her company when she needed a friend.
I will also say in Cassian's bonus chapter, it just proves that so much more even. Like, he also teaches her how to disembowel someone. And I wrote in my notes when I was taking them for the deep dive, disemwatery bowel someone. And there it is. That's where I am with my favorite moments. When Feyre and Mor lock eyes at Starfall, Mor immediately walks over to her. I couldn't help but think, like, when you're at a party or gathering and you're standing awkwardly and you see someone you know and you just like beeline for each other, it's like the biggest, maybe I'm just really socially anxious, but that's like the biggest sigh of relief. I'm like, oh, thank God, never leave my side. As Rhysand approaches Feyre at Starfall, there's that awkwardness. Feyre, instead of letting all the wrong words start to come out, looks around for someone to talk to. Even going up to strangers starts to sound appealing. And that is saying something because she is not known for being very social. Again, yet another human relatable moment from Feyre. She really doesn't like confrontation, especially when it comes to Rhys. Let us all remember Cressida the morning in the summer court. But again, it's just another moment remembering, oh yeah, she's 20.
Me again with Cassian moments. That's like pretty much all I talk about here in the favorite moments. Because of course, he cooks stew and it's not half bad. I just love so much. It feels very on brand that Cassian can shockingly cook.
It really does. When training, Feyre and Rhys are basically foreplaying. Rhys is staring at her as if he's devouring her. Quote, through the bond, brushing up against my mental shields, flashes of hunger so insatiable that it was an effort to focus on the task ahead. He then sends a trickle of amusement and a lick of pleasure down her mental shields. Again, Yoshi. When Feyre and Rhys go to fly off somewhere else to train, Rhys picks her up and tells her, you look good with wings. And then he kisses her brow. My fucking heart. It's so cute. Feyre having to get dressed in segments at the inn because it is so cold. This is real. I don't know if you ever did this, Lexi, but like getting ready for school in the morning in Colorado, it was freezing at like 5 a.m. And so I would always do it in segments because I would get so cold. And so I started putting my clothes in front of the heater to like... Me too. Yes.
I would do that too.
Like I'd put them on my skin and they'd like burn. It was great. I loved it. There's
also what I do in camping.
Rhys going downstairs to get food before changing because she deserved a hot meal after training all day. Acts of service and gifts are my love language. And that right there, acts of service just is bursting at the seams. Also, in that same scene, as Rhys is changing, Feyre starts thinking about anything but the naked half Illyrian in front of her, including ice baths, infected wounds, toe fungus. That would do it.
Think of Sunball, think of Sunball, think of Sunball. That's all I can think of.
Think of Amryn watching a Sunball game. That would do it. Favorite moments obviously includes everything from the one bed at the inn scene, but specifically Rhys telling her he's had a long time to think about how he wants to take her, and he has no intention of doing it all in one night. Quote, or in a room where I can't even fuck you against a wall. 14,000 out of 10, Rhys. No notes. We are about to begin our Maasverse Madness section.
If you have not read the Throne of Glass and Crescent City series before you leave, next episode we will be covering chapters 51 through 55. Need we say more? And if from the intro you're kind of still thinking, hey, maybe I should join Patreon, what are you waiting for? Go ahead, go join the party. It's so much fun over there. And speaking of parties, if you're not following us on TikTok and Instagram, what are you doing? Give us a follow at Fantasy Fangirls Pod.
Also, please do not forget to rate and review the podcast. It takes 5 seconds, and it's one of the best things you can do to all the podcasts that you listen to. But most importantly, share this episode with your fellow ACOTAR friends. Let's get into Maasverse Madness.
We are going to call out series crossover references and discuss theories here in the Maasverse Madness segment. It's a fairly short one for today, with spoilers from the entire Throne of Glass and Crescent City series.
We have to discuss Starfall and why it disturbs Amren. On a Reddit post by Yanni77, future underscore Kotara mentioned an idea. We know that in Kingdom of Ash, Aelin leaps through the word gate and starts falling between worlds. One of the worlds she falls through is Valaris on Starfall, as if she was a star. Quote, I'm quoting the whole damn thing because it gave me chills. I screamed in the car when I was reading this. Quote, she passed through the world of snow-capped mountains under shining stars, passed over one of those mountains where a winged male stood beside a heavily pregnant female, gazing at those very stars. In the scene, Aelin flings her hand out in a plea to help slow her down because she's zooming by all of these worlds, and Rhys snaps his head up to look at her and blasts night slowing power in her direction. Also, fun note, as Aelin is falling, she also sees Lunathian. Quote, she passed through a world where a great city had been built along the curve of a river, the buildings impossibly tall and glimmering with lights. SJM has confirmed that is Lunathian. So back to Amren. What if Amren fell through worlds just like Aelin had, likely with the same lack of control? And that's why it disturbs her? That could very well be the thing. However, Amren is at Starfall in a court of frost and starlight, which is a starfall that Aelin falls through because Fae-vorite is pregnant. We can assume that that's the one, unless Fae-vorite has another pregnancy, so we don't know. But why this date specific? Is this a time manipulation thing? People are falling through the worlds all the time, but it always just happens to be on Starfall in Prythian. I don't really know how that would work. I don't know how to even explain it into a microphone without confusing myself. Also, why did Aelin appear on Starfall falling through a gate, but Bryce didn't when she fell through a gate when traveling to Prythian? I have no idea. I have 0.0% idea, but I do think that maybe one of the reasons Amren has distaste for Starfall is because she had a very similar experience to Aelin. While we're still on Tog, there is a Bloodbane parallel. When Rhys is poisoned and the Suriel says to Fae-vorite the poison was Bloodbane, that is the same poison that Kaltain slips into Celaena's wine at the final fight against Cain in the first Throne of Glass book. This is also the drug she missed on her poison test.
That's a really fun fact there.
Brett and I are listening to Tog right now because he's making his way through that series, and we were in the final scene with Cain and it said Bloodbane, and I literally dropped everything and ran to my laptop and wrote this down. I was very excited.
When Fae-vorite is experimenting with her powers and melding them to work together, she describes, quote, they had come from the same dark origin, the same eternal well of power, once long ago, before language was invented and the world was new. This well language immediately reminded me of the descriptions in the Tog world with the deep power within oneself. It is frequently used as Aelin discovers just how deep her well of magic goes. Understanding that these Fae come from different worlds but within the same universe, I love how there are those little ties into how magic as a whole does indeed work similarly.
And friends, that is it for today's episode.
Like we mentioned a moment ago, next episode we will be covering chapters 51 through 55. I can hear you being giddy from here.
I can hear my pulse going up because I'm so nervous to cover that episode.
I'm so scared to cover you all we're so excited, but we also, you know us, we really want to do this justice. And we know how much anticipation there is around this one particular episode, and we got a lot of work to do.
We are scared. Thank you, as always, to our executive producer, Hayden, a.k.a. our sanity manager, a.k.a. dude who learned a lot about us this episode. We freaking love you.
You all, there's a lot that got edited out in that one bench scene. I'm just going to say
and we will never release it.
Also, like I said, please join the Patreon party. We have so much fun with our book club coming up and Penn Cole joining us. We have community events. We have live Q&As with Nicole and I. There's the Discord, which just has so much extra in there. We also always like to drop things first in Discord. We love it so much. We love our Patreon members so much, and really and truly thank you so much for everything that you contribute.
You can also sign up for our newsletter. We just, at least at the time of recording this, we just sent out our May one, which had a lot of goodies, including a lot of fantasy book recommendations. We only send you an email once a month, and you can sign up for that in the link in the show notes.
In fact, even this last newsletter, we included a small bookish store, which we always include discounts for those as well. And hey, Sparrow and Wild, I'm wearing my shirt right here.
We love you, Sparrow and Wild.
And please do give us a follow on social media. That's where the everyday party's happening, at Fantasy Fangirls Pod.
You can also rate and review the show. Like I said, it takes 5 seconds, and it's one of the most beneficial things you can do to help us and also help all podcasts that you listen to. But most importantly, out of all the things on this list, please share this episode with your fellow ACOTAR friends. If your friend also screamed and kicked their legs in the air like a giddy child when there was only one bed at the inn, this is the episode to send to them.
And that whole mates thing happened too,
you know? I need to go.
All right, friends. We will see you next week for the biggest episode we have recorded so far. Talk to you then.
I have a question for Hayden when he's editing. Did you write "cut for your butt"? Because that's funny.
I looked it up because I was looking at the resource thing, and that was them, and I just giggled so much.
It's okay, Hayden. You're still funny. There's people out there with Tamlin tattoos. Pour one out for them. They're not dead. Wait, hold on. Cut that out of the episode. Feyre tries to turn around to reciprocate the touchy-touchy, but Rhys holds her to him so that she can't. Quote,
I just love how I was doing a play-by-play here.
I did have to stop myself after a while. I was like, I can't do a full touch watch like I did with the Cauldron Nightmares. I better. Hayden's probably like, thank God.
Get back in your crib.
Is he screaming? Oh my God.
Jake had to run to Mom and Dad's place because our HelloFresh got delivered there because I keep forgetting to change the address. I needed to grab some tools from Dad, so. Thank you, buddy. I love you so much. Have a good nap. He's just mad at me now. Okay, thank you.
I can't believe I just watched him like a spider monkey crawl back in his bed.
He literally was running all over. Literally saw him kept darting back and forth, and it's what is he doing in there?